If members would like to take their seats, please. No mai haere mai kia Operations and Monitoring meeting on Thursday, the 2nd of August 2018. Kuia mā, I koro mā, e rangatira mā, e manuhiri mā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Special welcome in the gallery today to the Mayor of New Plymouth, Mr. Neil Holden. Welcome, Neil. If you'd like to stand up, Neil's come to plagiarise what Rotorua does in the Rotorua way. He has a keen interest in mountain biking, and I understand he's going to end up in our accident and emergency department this afternoon. Oh, he's already been there. Okay. Also, a special welcome to Shirley Trumper, Chair of the Rural Community Board, who's also in the gallery, and a special welcome to members of the Crankworks community, the mountain biking fraternity, who are playing a huge role in the economic development of this district. A special welcome to you all, and Ariki, you and your team, a special welcome, and we'll talk to you a little bit later. I'd like to declare the meeting open, and anyone with a cell phone, including myself, mine's in my pocket, please make sure they're turned off. We will take breaks if the meeting is drawn out for you to answer any urgent messages, etc. Just to remind you all that your behaviour has been live streamed, and these microphones are very sensitive to picking up little comments you make to your next door neighbour, so just be very, very careful. The first item on the agenda is the apologies. We have apologies for lateness from Councillor Bentley and an apology from Potawa Basani Tule. Are there any other apologies? Would someone like to move? Councillor Gould, seconded Councillor Metapeka Raukawa-Tate. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. I'll ask for any declarations of interest. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an interest in the first presentation as a Director of Mountain Bike Events Limited.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, and we do look forward to your presentation along with Mr. Tibble. Thank you. Are there any other items of interest that people need to declare? Okay, urgent items not on the agenda. Are there any matters that need to be dealt with today, and you need to explain why I'll explain why it isn't on the agenda, and you also need to explain why it can't wait. Are there any items of late business? Thank you. Okay, the next item is the confirmation of the minutes, which is on the overhead. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kent, seconder. Mr. Waru. Are there any matters arising from those minutes that members wish to raise? There appears to be not. All those. Oh, Mr. Waru. Oh, you can't second it. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. The Worship of Mayor seconds it. Thank you, Hilda. It's that the minutes of the Operations Monitoring Committee meeting held on the 5th of July be confirmed as a true and correct record. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we come to presentations. Firstly, I'd like to call to the presenter's desk Mr. Ariki Tibble and Councillor Dave Donaldson. Also a special welcome to Tu Mutu, who's here with the mountain biking people as well. It's going to be quite entertaining, so sit back and enjoy. There's a video and a great presentation. Yeah, I've acknowledged the team. Okay, welcome, gentlemen.
Is that working? Can everyone hear me?
No, agreed.
Oh, beauty. Cool, yeah, kia ora everybody, and thank you for having us here. Are we good to go?
Yeah, kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just speak to the first slide, but Ariki will talk us through. So, just as we always do, to remind the council or the committee that Mountain Bike Events Limited is a public-private partnership of which council is a 49% shareholder. Those are our objectives, vision and mission, And I thought it might be timely just to update councillors on who the directors are. So each shareholder of the three shareholders appoints two directors. Directors for Ferris Springs Holdings Limited are Andrew Jensen, the General Manager of Skyline Skyrides, and Bruce Thomason, who's the Director of the Tree Walk. Directors for Rotorua Lakes Council, the independent directors, Mr Arthur Clapp from Wellington, who is, amongst other things, Paralympics selector, and just been appointed the independent project lead for the Future of Sport, a Sport New Zealand project. Council's other director is Malcolm Thomas, who's also on the board of Cycling New Zealand and has recently been appointed to the UCI Mountain Bike Commission and is on his way back from a commission meeting in Spain. And the third shareholder, Takarua Mutu, has appointed his brother too, who's with us here today, a director of multi-day experiences who deliver the event, and also Mountain Bike Rotorua, and myself. So I'll now pass over to Araki to talk you through the year-end wrap for the 2018 event.
Excellent. And once again, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having us here today. We've got a few members of our team sitting in the gallery as well, the members of our Crankworks management team, all Rotorua locals, and a few suppliers as well. So, yeah, thanks, guys, for coming along this morning as well to check it all out. In the last couple of years, we've spoken to a different set of objectives to what you can see up here on the screen. We've really spoken about community engagement as being one priority objective. We've spoken about marketing, so promoting Rotorua as a genuine international mountain biking mecca, and we've talked about economic impacts. And those are three objectives that have kind of become entrenched in what we do as business as usual. So I'm not going to speak too much about those objectives this year because, although I will touch on them a little bit later, but what I want to talk about is the objectives that I shared with this group back in January. And those objectives were to run some new events at new sites to showcase Rotorua, to focus on our community engagement and improve accessibility of the event for Rotorua locals. And then number three was to timestamp the on-site experience, because we have to evolve the event each year so that we're changing up the offering, keeping things fresh. So these are the objectives that we had for 2018, and that's what I want to speak to you about this morning. So I'll touch on the first one first, which was new events at new sites. The first site that we operated at this year was Waipa. We figured that, we'd actually heard that a bunch of riders from overseas had come to Rotorua in previous years, participated at Skyline and then taken off to Queenstown afterwards, and hadn't even stepped foot in our forest. So we wanted to run some events in the forest that forced those competitors to experience other sites around Rotorua. The idea initially was that the new developments there that Red Stagger leading would be complete and that the roading would be complete as well. Unfortunately, they weren't complete by the time Crankworks kicked off, but as our team does, when we get lemons, we make lemonade. And so there's a couple of photos of a bit of the vibe that we managed to create in those first few days at Waipa. Another event that we ran was in the forest. We took some of our local and international riders right into the heart of the forest to ride one of the classic downhill trails in New Zealand. And so a couple of photos of the event there. This one was particularly special to us. This was the dual slalom. We had Empire of Dirt. We've got Adam from Empire of Dirt sitting in the gallery right now. He'd come to me last year and said that they wanted to build a trail in the community. After looking at a few different sites, we settled on the Wattles and managed to get a trail built there. The idea was that that would be in place for the community outside of event time. And when we got to the event itself, we realised pretty quickly that we had a production team on site, we had cameramen on site, we had our entire sport operations and team there as well. And so we gathered everyone together in the morning and we said, look, this looks spectacular. We've got all these resources. What if we try and live stream it and do a makeshift broadcast? And those team members had never worked with one another before. For many of them, 6 a.m. that morning was the first time that they'd even even met one another. And we got them together, and we stood there under the wattles in the darkness, and basically said, let's have a crack at this. Let's make a real good show of it. If we can't do it, let's make sure that it's because of technical difficulties that we couldn't achieve it, not because we didn't work together or try our absolute best. And I'm pleased to say we were able to produce a Facebook live stream, which was of a similar quality to our standard productions. And I've got a little bit of a clip to share with you now. Sure.
Dual slalom's the best sport ever. It's a close second behind downhill anyway. The young kid just pushed my bike up for me and he was stoked on life, so it was just good atmosphere all around.
It's fast, quick, and when you blink, it's over.
Don't blink!
It's good to see more venues.
That's just gone
Dual
to
slalom's
start
the
again.
best sport ever.
Yeah, so that's just a little snippet of what was produced by one of our partners, Pink Bike, after the event. And what I was really stoked with was in the weeks and leading, after the event, we were receiving messages from people saying, we're down here at the dual slalom track, we can't get on it because the line's too big. We saw people down there having picnics. We went and enjoyed picnics down there ourselves. And so that's been one of the real highlights was the dual slalom this year. Eat Street was another one we wanted to activate more fully this year. So we started with the opening ceremony at the start, and we finished down there with our Deep Summer photo competition. And the photo on the right was taken at the Deep Summer photo competition, and that was on the Saturday of the event after a rained out slopestyle. And it's such a cool competition because we invite international photographers to come here and to show us our city through their eyes. And so they pull together a slideshow and then they present it in front of the crowd to music. And again, I've got a few snippets to share with you. This is from the winning submission. It's from a guy called Lawrence Crossman. And there's about 5 segments in his full piece, but just for the benefit of the group and to try and keep it as brief as possible, I've got about a 2-minute 30 segment, which has 3 of Lawrence's segments in it. So I'd like to play that for you now.
The expansive yet quaint township of Rotorua is a hustle and bustle of activity. Bazaars and markets that sell everything you need, and some things you certainly don't. But behind this facade of fashion, there is an underground of culture, art waiting to be found. Day turned to night and I found myself journaling my day's excitements. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared at my window. I went over to investigate. Maybe it was a kiwi.
Mysteries of this land are only uncovered through darkness.
The open wilderness is a blank slate, where your mind can roam free. A canvas to paint your imagination. I never feel alone here. Among the wilderness, we embrace life.
So there you go. I mean, art and mountain biking, who knew, right? So it's very effective, and when you've got a crowd of people who are all engaged, it's actually quite a magic night. So that's definitely one of the highlights. Cool. So the second objective was community engagement and accessibility. Some of the projects we worked on this year, Share the Ride, it's not a new project, but we're always looking to evolve and breathe fresh new life into the different activations that we focus on. On the left-hand side there, you can see some families. We identified some children who were in low socioeconomic environments, and we pulled them through and took them out in the forest for riding sessions to integrate them into the community, and then we finished by presenting them with the bike. And the photo on the left are the guys from Giant Bicycles presenting bikes to those families. The photo on the right as well. So that's the family side of the Share the Ride program. We've got a schools element as well, and every child at Makoia Intermediate this year was taken out into the forest and given sessions and shown how to navigate and look after their bikes and that sort of thing as well. So that's a very dear and special activation to us. Our volunteer program, this year we had to put out a call to our volunteers asking for about 80 more volunteers than we've ever had before. And one of the things you fear as an event director with this event is that goodwill starts to erode over time and that our volunteer workforce won't come to the party or answer the call. But that didn't happen again. So we put out a call and we needed about 360. Over 400 people subscribed to become volunteers, and we signed up 367 in the end. And 95% of those, once again, Rotorua locals come into the party to help us out to deliver this event. The National Schools Mountain Bike Champs, this is one part of our schools program. The other part is what we call Educate. Educate was a program where we took 227 secondary school age students through the event. They had been doing projects on Crankworks Rotorua in the areas of PE and geography at achievement standard level 2 and 3. So 227 of those students got to come and not only study the event, but to actually come and experience it as well. And they were toured through by trained teachers during the course of the event from around the region as well. So they weren't just Rotorua locals, those students. For the participate side of the equation, we had the National Schools Mountain Bike Champs. In 2017, we had around 280 competitors in that. In 2018, that went up to 380. So massive growth, and that's from all around the country. The other way that we looked at engaging the community was pretty much as a direct result of this presentation last year, where we spoke of ticket prices and trying to reduce rates to increase engagement. So ticket prices on the one hand, and on the other hand, driving up locals days. So we increased the locals days and ran more events like the dual slalom, like the Redwoods downhill, like everything we did at Waipa, to give locals the opportunity to get involved with the event without having to actually pay anything. Objective number 3 was time stamping the on-site experience. So this was a bit of a gamble for us. We took our Kids Works arena and we took our pump track and we swapped them around, and that required quite a bit of work to get that achieved, but it paid off. So our Kids Works arena ended up in an expanded site. We had increased capacity and we were at or exceeding capacity on most days of the event. So that's already another problem to deal with in the future, which is a good problem to have. And the other one was the pump track. So we moved it to a new location on site at Skyline where the capacity was greater, and we have not reached capacity on that site, so that's good to know because we need the space to grow into. We've got a couple of challenges we have to resolve to make that happen, but that's one of the things we're working on for 2019. So those were all kind of opportunities and things that we delivered. They were all risks and they were all challenges, and in many cases we were rolling the dice because you don't know whether anything's going to work until it actually happens. The proof in the pudding is in the eating, as they say. But our final challenge, almost the ultimate insult, was to get to the second to last day of the event and have the heavens open up and the rain come pouring down. And I'll just share a quick story with you about this, because what we learned very quickly was that with scattered showers, by the time a cloud comes across the top of the skyline property and we see it peek across the trees, we have about 3 minutes before the rain starts to dump on our slopestyle course. If the rain dumps on our slopestyle course, then we have about 4 hours that we need to clear the track and get it prepared once again. So it's super important we get the tarps onto the trail to try and keep it dry. It takes about 6 to 10 minutes to get the tarps on. So knowing that we only had a 3-minute window from seeing the clouds to actually getting the tarps on, we had to take some other action to get this sorted. So we had, it's funny talking about it to you and having some of the people involved sitting in the crowd as well, but we had Jamie, who's sitting in the gallery. He was up the top of Mount Longotaha, facing the cold winds and the rain, and he sat up there for 5 or 6 hours just watching the clouds come in, radioing to me, text messaging me to tell me what was happening. We had Tuck drive out to Hamurana, and he just sat in his car there and again watched the rain. We had volcanic air safaris, or volcanic air rather, one of the pilots watching the rain radar and phoning in as well. And then I was sitting in a point position with radio comms to 2, who's also sitting up there. And basically if we had rain coming, we could get a 5 to 10 minute call on whether the rain was coming or not. And so throughout the day it was, sorry guys, tarps on, and then boom, away the guys go. And you can see up there in the top left, another one of the guys, Tu and Rich is here as well, running to get the tarps on. And on the bottom left, what you're seeing with Tu there lying on the ramp is mixture of exhaustion and relief at getting it on just as the rain comes down. So, and even Dave D, Deputy Dave D up there on the top right, got on the shovels, because the urgency to get the course ready to try and get a broadcast going was extremely high. And that day, we did not manage to deliver the event. We had to postpone to the following day. So despite a full day of everybody just pulling their weight to get it done, we had to turn around and walk back with our heads down to the office and know that we had to postpone till the next day. And we still had the deep summer competition to run that night, which was fantastic, by the way. So a huge challenge, but relieved to say that on the Sunday, it was tarps on, tarps off for most of the morning, and then we managed to pull it off in the afternoon, which is a huge relief. But I wanted to share it with you because it displays the extent to which, when you're running an event, it's a bit of a fickle business. We have no control over the rain. And the lengths that our team go to try and make things happen, when things hit the fan, it's the team that pulls through, and it's something I'm very proud of with our team. A few insights into the finances. What you can see there are comparisons from 2015 through to 2017 for commercial revenue, non-commercial investment, and ticketing revenue and registration. And then on the right-hand side, if I push the trigger there, you can see the 2018 year-end results for each of those line items. So the good news is commercial revenue is continuing to increase. If you look at non-commercial investment, that peaked in 2017, and that was the start of our central government contract, so the new phase of our central government contract. So that is a high that we will not reach again. From 2017, we're projecting an outgoing tide of non-commercial investment, and the goal and challenge that we have is to make the commercial revenue increase at a rate that's quicker than that outgoing tide. So that's one of the challenges we face over the next few years, knowing that we have the license for another 9 years from now. In terms of ticketing revenue and registration, that increased through to 2017, and this year, unfortunately, our ticket sales were down, and that's in terms of revenue, and it's symptomatic of the poor weather that we had on the Saturday and Sunday. So those are our money-making days, and to have rain on both days leaves a lot of people in Auckland and a lot of people in Tauranga who would otherwise be on their way to the event. So that's one challenge. The second part of that is by reducing our ticket prices, we reduce our profit margins, and we open ourselves and expose ourselves to inclement weather events that can negatively affect our revenue streams. So in actual fact, if I take the rates that we charged last year and I hypothetically put those across the number of people that were through the gate this year, it would have been about $69,000 more in revenue that we would have had for ticketing revenue and registration. So just sharing with you some of the challenges there. If I refer back to those first historical objectives that we spoke about in previous years in terms of putting Rotorua on the map as an international mountain biking mecca. One of our key figures or measures for that is our international viewership. In 2017, we had 11.4 million people tune into our broadcast. And just remember, our broadcast, we have creative control over. So while they cover the sports events, they are laced with authentic Rotorua destination experiences. So that is our advertising campaign. And we were chuffed in 2015 when 4.6 million people tuned in worldwide. Well, this year we had 11.6 million tune in worldwide. So I was disappointed when I saw the increase from 11.4 to 11.6, but when I put it in context, it's a pretty outstanding result. If I look at the visitor nights, we know that most visitors come to Rotorua, stay for 2 to 3 nights, while our visitors for Crankworx stayed on average 7.4 nights. And then economic impact, once again, was significant with 4.2 million into Rotorua's economy in 2018. So that takes it to a total of 18.49 million since 2015. So looking ahead to 2019, what are we proposing to change? Well, this year was, to us, a lot of rolling the dice. There were so many things we wanted to try out and so many areas we wanted to raise the bar. Next year is going to be about consolidation and focus. What do I mean by that? Well, in terms of consolidation, we're going to make the event return to a 6 to 7 day format instead of the 9 days that we've run in the past. And we're going to take a break from the National Schools Championships and the Redwoods Downhill. The National Schools Championships is sanctioned by Cycling New Zealand, which is constituent-based, and they need to go to the South Island every 2 years. So we'll take a break and we'll try and get them back on board in 2020. And then we have the return of the Enduro World Series. So with the Enduro World Series comes more top-class competitors, more international media, and so we're really focused on just smashing that event out of the park in 2019. And then our other focus will be on ticket sales. So in terms of schedule, we are still about a month away from locking things down. Once we settle on our format and day and schedule for the Enduro World Series, then we'll build the rest of the event around that and then look to kind of release our schedule in September with the start of our ticketing campaign. And on that ticketing campaign, I just thought I'd share with you a video that's kind of hot off the press. It's the first time that anyone gets to see it, including our team. And it's the promotional teaser for 2019. And here it is.
Double. Thanks, mate.
Hey, dog.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tucker. Are there any questions around the table that anyone has? Councillor Maxwell.
Well, first of all, I want to say, Riki, congratulations again for a hugely successful event in 2018. This is an icon event for us here in Rotorua. And so through you and Dave, congratulate the team for making another beautiful event. Reading some time back there, I think there was an extra 5,000 people came this year from previous events because of the extra that you had put on and the volunteers supporting it. Interesting to see that you're going to drop it from a 9-day event down to 6, 7. But Enduro, I heard, is that going to make up for the difference? And so, in saying congratulations, I know it's a huge risk. The weather, you're reliant on the weather, and the biggest days being a Saturday and a Sunday. But look at that, we're still here in the Rotorua economy. You said we received 4.2 million. And it was 18.9 over so many days. That is tremendous for us. And so all the best for 2019. What I'm pleased about is what 5 years has been going now. We're aware that the first year was tough, it was hard, didn't make, but you and the team had the courage to continue on, and it now is a huge success, and long may it continue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Maxwell. Your Worship, the Mayor.
Was I right?
I have got a question, or two actually. What would the risk be of loss of income from sponsors had the weather have not allowed you to put on slopestyle at all? Because I saw a lot of panic about it, but...
Yeah, the main panic was around the broadcast for the slopestyle. So if we don't deliver a broadcast for our international media house partners, then my understanding is that technically they don't need to pay for the rights that they've purchased. So we had two contingency plans. One was that we delivered it a day late, and the other contingency plan was we'd do it the day after. Now, just remember, throughout the entire event, we've got our eye firmly on that event and making sure that we deliver it come hell or high water. And looking at the forecast, we could see that it was a clearing on the Monday, so we would do whatever it was going to take to deliver it. And even if it meant that we would have no spectators sitting on the hillside, we would have run it on the Monday no matter what. So there is a risk around that, but like all the risks associated with this event, we calculate the risk, we keep our eye on the ball, and we mitigate it wherever possible, and then we do whatever it takes to get it done.
And my other question is the schools, because I went out to have a look at that and I just absolutely loved it. I understand Cycling New Zealand wanting to rotate it, but is there some way we can just keep a North Island event going? Because I met Nelson there and they said even at the cost to get there, they were prepared to come. And they were very aware other South Island schools found cost quite a barrier. But boy, that's a great feeder into the next 9 years.
We did, we did really push to keep the event here, but what we found is the harder we push, the harder they push back. And we understand the need for constituency-based organisations like Cycling New Zealand to take the event to the South Island because it's in the interest, from their perspective, of developing the sport. And so we decided that there's no harm in letting it go for a year because we know that what we've got is the fastest growing secondary schools mountain bike event that has ever been, and we know that the schools want to be here, and we'll let the constituents themselves make that decision, and hopefully they'll come back to us, and I'm confident that they will. In the meantime, I've floated it with Cycling New Zealand that, hey, what about if we ran a secondary schools Enduro this year, because it's just recently been sanctioned by the UCI. We've got the Enduro World Series here, and so I'm just waiting for a response from Cycling New Zealand now. So, we'll see how that goes.
I thought you'd have a strategy, and can I just congratulate you and the board. This is a phenomenal success, and we know it nationally, but we also know it internationally. And we can't underestimate the value of this to us as a community. It's the volunteers that they just pour out again, and you're turning some away. So, that is amazing for us. But the kids too, I love their aspiration to feed into the sport, and with, building the BMX track. I just think it's all coming together as a very strategic plan, and I do congratulate you for your confidence.
Thank you.
If Mr. Chair, if I could just add to Araki's response to the first question Her Worship posed about the slopestyle, it's highly technical, getting that production lined up with gaps you've purchased on the World Wide Web, on the internet, so you have to purchase your space. And then if you can't, and then you have to purchase alternatives given the weather forecast. So that's real tricky. And then, of course, take my hat off to the team who do their utmost to make it happen in that window that you've got on the internet. So in so many areas, the team is performing amazingly, and also they're valued members of other stops on the Crankworks World Tour. So our trail builders have built the trails in Innsbruck, and many of our team have performed roles on other rounds of the Crankworx World Tour. So that's great promotion for Rotorua globally. Thanks.
I have one question for you, Dave. As our economic lead, putting your other hat on, I'm sure you'd be delighted with the economic impact result that Tuck has revealed this morning. In terms of council's involvement, we initially, to kickstart the project, underwrote to a certain level. Can you tell us the history of that and what happened in 2018?
So council has provided and extended a $500,000 underwrite to year 2021. And thank you for that and for committing to supporting through the major events fund out to that time. We haven't drawn on the underwrite this year. We reported fully to all shareholders, including who worship Chief Executive and yourself earlier this week at our AGM. And the finances are always a moving feast. So, you know, we're still receiving invoices or being asked to produce invoices for media sales from the 2015 round of Crankworx. So, you know, when this beast finally keels over, it'll be a long time before the finances are eventually wrapped up. We have to draw a line in the sand at 30 June and report that through to the shareholders as we do.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Ariki, for your presentation this morning. I think it was very good that you did show us that clip about the realities of when you're trying to head off the weather and, you know, you're dependent on people sitting down one end of the district and up at the other end and just trying to do your best to pull things off. So, you know, big ups to you and your team about that. It does show the commitment that you've all got as well. I just wanted to, up there where you say consolidate and you're looking at a 6 to 7 day festival instead of a 9-day festival, are you talking to anybody else who might want to hold something significant during that period that Crankworx is on? And if I can just give you an example, I often go to a big wine festival out of town here, and what they've decided to do in that festival, because people stay on and come early and stay on and etc., they're looking at holding a Māori artists' high-end exhibition, art exhibition, which, you know, just so some people might want to go look at something else while they're here. Is there anything that you might be, are you talking to anybody else that might be, not so that you don't have to do it, you don't have to put your head around that sort of thing, but are you talking to anybody else who might take advantage of having all of these people in town but might want to see something else? You know, people go off and do the Crankworx experience, others will go and do our tourism experience, but there might be one or two other significant events that could be happening in town for others that might, you know, want to see something else. I'm just asking. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're not super proactive about going out and finding other festivals to work with. We're just sort of focusing on making sure that we've got enough room nights here to look after the teams that we're bringing over and the competitors that we have. But we're totally open to that sort of a thing. And, you know, we have had approaches from the likes of conferences who are looking to come and run at the same time so they can bring their people along to the event. We've had approaches from other festivals that want to either align or move their events so that they don't align to try and maximise it across multiple events. So we're absolutely open to it. What that looks like, I'm not entirely sure. But what this does is it clears that first weekend to be available for festivals to run and to contribute and leverage from the event, and that's something we're totally open to.
Good question. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ariki, for a good, thorough report and the video clips as well. I guess now with the last 3 years of holding the event, or 4 years, sorry, beg your pardon, when you reflect back, every year it has rained. And now with weather bombs and inclement weather peaking at any time, I think that's probably going to be a serious factor in your, even in your 7-day plan. So while it is very good for tourism in Rotorua and for the growth of businesses as well, my question is, what does Team Crankworks 2019 seek through the council for 2019?
Sorry, Councillor Kuma, could you please repeat the question? I didn't-
What does Team Crankworks 2019 seek through the council for 2019? Like in terms of continued support, and what is your vision from the council?
Sure. Well, I mean, currently we've got an agreement with council that sees us receive $75,000 contribution towards the event. You know, if you look at that outgoing tide of public investment, that's the race that's on for us at the moment, is to try and get that commercial revenue up. Anything that council can contribute or assist with towards buying me more time to get that commercial revenue up is hugely appreciated. I feel like the $75,000 cash contribution, which is even if we were to double that and say $150,000, I think if the council were to invest $150,000 and you returned what this event's currently returning, I mean, I'd be very interested if the council can think of another spend of $150,000 that has the same return that this has. And so on the basis of that, if more support would be fantastic and hugely appreciated, but we also work with what we've got, and that's what we've done since day one. Whatever comes to the party, that's what we'll work with, and we'll do the best that we can. And in terms of the weather, yes, we've had inclement weather, and it's been a challenge, but I'd just like to point out we haven't cancelled a single event over the course of the entire Crankworks Festival for any year yet, and we don't intend to.
And Mr Chair, if I could add to the answer, you know, I wouldn't be so rash as to suggest council puts a roof over the slopestyle course, but that would solve every problem. But I think it's how council views the underwrite, which is the safety net if we are wiped out. And does council view that as a debt the event owes the community, or is it an investment? So I just pose that as a proposition.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and good morning, Ariki, and thank you very much for your presentation and also the details around the commercial and non-commercial investment. I actually had a question on that slide because I can see that basically on average it appears that over 4 years your non-commercial investment is $625,000. So I'm just wondering strategically what percentage of non-commercial investment will be your ideal? And my question is basically around, because we do give you that $500,000 underwrite up until 2021, and very pleasing to hear that you haven't had to draw from that. But just wondering what would be your ideal?
My ideal would be to have enough commercial revenue that we don't have to rely on any investment. But I'm also, having scanned the environment in New Zealand, so nationwide, any major event that is held in this country cannot be run or has not been run without public investment. We wouldn't have attracted this event if we hadn't had public investment in the first place. Without the support of central government and local government, we would never have secured this event. And all of these slides that I'm showing you and all these stats would never have been achieved. And I don't personally see a future where that could dry up and the event could continue. So it's the challenge that we're facing with the size of our market. You know, we draw on the Australian market in quite a heavy way, so a lot of our sponsors are drawing from their Australasian budgets or Australian budgets. And I don't think we'll ever get to a point where central or local government can completely exit the relationship or the event and maintain the event's presence here. So that's the decision for each of those different parties to make, is what is the value of the event and how much do we want it? And yeah, we will live by whatever decisions are made on that front.
Thank you, and sorry, just that leads on well to my next question, which was, and I apologise if you have already mentioned this to us, but but I'm quite interested in terms of your marketing strategy and just wanting to know just how much you target international compared to domestic, and whether domestic you target Auckland, or it is, I was pleased to hear the Tauranga, and I presume actually Taupo as well. And that's just so that we can get an idea on are we the hub regionally or are we the hub nationally for this. And just lastly, I also wanted to thank you on just the amazing work that you have done to make this affordable and accessible for the families. I must admit, when it first came, I did air some concerns, and I thank you very much for taking that on board and being able to bring this back to us with such fantastic results. And I do wonder if with the team and all the volunteers, and I love the engagement you've done with the students, if there is potentially a possibility for any students or young people that are interested in studying events management to shadow the team. I just think it would be such a wonderful opportunity for them to learn.
I think I forgot the question.
Marketing-wise, who do you target domestically? Is it a region? Is it Auckland? And what's the weighting with international and domestic?
Yeah, we've there's in terms of the marketing, it's split between a couple of different strategies and efforts. One comes from Crankworks International and one comes from our local organising committee. So I'll talk a little bit about the international front first. So the international front is run by Crankworks International. We collaborate with them on the development of their communications and marketing strategy, and that involves using the channels that they have to distribute any content we create. So the content that you just saw, that's going to be playing in Whistler during the Whistler Festival. So 35,000 people hillside for the slopestyle day, and that television commercial will be playing on the Crankworks big screens throughout. So we hit go on that television teaser nice and early, so that's ready to go. They will also promote that through their official Crankworks channels on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And so that's the basis of where their drive comes from. It also gets played during their broadcasts. If we turn our attention to the local organising committee, then we have a marketing campaign that is focused on Central North Island, and we focus very heavily on Auckland, Tauranga, and that kind of enclave around Rotorua. But it's hard to separate the marketing we do for that from the marketing that we do for things like the National Schools event, where we've got people from as far down south as Alexandra coming, because to us, people coming and experiencing the event is the number one marketing activity that we could possibly hope for. So it's hard to put a spend on that. That doesn't touch our marketing budget. Those are just things that happen, and we're casting the net wide and bringing people in to come and stand by the fire so they can go away and tell their friends. So that's a big part of it. And then our other international focus from a local organising committee is the Eastern Seaboard of Australia. And we do targeted campaigns through our social media primarily, using the teaser like you saw there, and using Google AdWords and things, so that we're getting those ads playing on that Eastern Seaboard. And then over and above that, we're doing PR campaigns. This year we partnered with a PR agency in Australia, and one of the top athletes, Caroline Buchanan, and she promoted it through her networks in Australia. So we're always looking at ways to leverage that. We've got Jenna in the gallery here who drives that PR side of it for us. And so, yeah, once you kind of look across the whole spread, there's a lot that we do domestically and internationally. But the thing with marketing is you can always do more, right? So the biggest challenge with marketing, I think, is as you get closer to the event, if certain revenue streams don't come through, marketing's usually the first that starts where you make cutbacks. And at the same time, once you start making cutbacks on marketing, that's the first sort of death toll of an event as well. So that's the balancing act.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Sorry, Tuck, did you have something?
I was just going to say, in terms of your other question around young people getting involved, we're super open to that. And a bunch of our event managers have come on the event in a supportive capacity and then slowly make their way into the sort of front line. And so, yeah, we're super open to that sort of a thing.
Mr. Waru.
Kia ora e te tia mana o tira tātou katoa tēnā tātou. Ariki, Dave, karawhi ngā mahi rangatira. Ko kōrero hia ngā kōrero mo te moni, mo te pūtea, so yeah, we've been quite focused on that stuff, but I'm more interested in relationships, because I know without relationships these things can't happen. So in terms of mana whenua relationships and other things, how do you see those being, keeping strong going forward?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we've been working with the Rotorua Block Trust for access onto the Skyline property, and that's been super important. On the top of the Skyline property, we have Ngāti Whakaua tribal lands. We can't run our downhill race without access to the farmland up there, and so we've had great relationships with Ngāti Whakaua tribal lands on coordinating that for the last few years, and I don't see any thing in the immediate future that would suggest that that's going to head in any other direction than what it's been for the last few years. This year we were really fortunate to have Mana Whenua and CNI agree to allow us to, along with council, build the dual slalom track on the Waddles as well. So without those relationships, the event doesn't exist again. So there's so many little balancing acts in this event, and that's one of the big ones for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Hunt, followed by Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Ari. It's really about what sort of businesses have been involved from the beginning, and also how many of those are local and how many are national, and what has been the change in the perception in the business community over the 4 years that it's been running. If you could just describe that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and we've seen with Eat Street, that's probably the best example I can think of a collective that have worked together to bring the event to that location. We didn't contribute to the cost of the big screen down there for Eat Street. That was an Eat Street-led initiative. So if anything, I feel that would have been inconceivable 3 years ago, and so that's one of the real exciting things. Is the extent to which that group have come together. And they're even talking about things like having a fully suspended screen located down there that could play the rugby or the sport throughout the year, which we think is a great idea. I'm not sure what needs to happen for that to happen, but if that's anything to go by, I think that's a good sign. In terms of other businesses, the feedback loop really comes to me through surveys that we do, and it doesn't differentiate between whether we're talking to a business or an expo holder, so hard for me to comment on, and without actually doing a bit of research into how the business community are feeling, but others might have comments on that, yeah.
I could just add that we do have local businesses or local branches of international businesses who have been sponsors of the event, one from the get-go, and they're all on our phone, without naming anyone, they're all on the website and on the Rotorua page of the Crankworks website.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, just to add to that, if that's okay. I know that we try and hire local as well for all of our suppliers. In the audience today, we've got Neil from Euro Scaffold, one of the suppliers that we work with, and I just mentioned out to some of our suppliers earlier this week as I announced the dates for next year. Just said that we'd be coming along today. So having Neil here is awesome, and wherever possible, we work with local suppliers, and we understand that those relationships are hugely valuable to us, and I understand that those suppliers are pretty happy with the way things have gone as well. So,
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation this morning, and I apologise for my lateness and I missed out on probably some of the important parts, but I congratulate you on a system well run, and I'm just curious as to New Zealand Crankworks as separate from international Crankworks, if you like. Do you control absolutely everything that goes on during that week, or do you seek outside expertise from other events? As in, what I'm getting at is that do you control the catering, and do you control the security, and do you control the clean-up and the day-to-day running of the event? It's
an interesting question around control. And in just about every element, it's a collaboration. If I think of the relationship, for instance, around sponsorship, Crankworks International, our partner in it, no sponsorship gets approved without mutual agreement. So Crankworks International can't make a decision and override us without us coming on board, and vice versa. They can't sign on a sponsor without us agreeing to it. And that kind of comes through to an operational level as well. So Crankworks International cannot make us do something that we're not prepared to do. Likewise, we can't do the same to them, but we work together in partnership, and I certainly feel like we have as much control as we could have, I guess, over all of those different elements that you've referred to. So, I feel like we are the makers of our own destiny in terms of how the event is run, but we do so with their support, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And yes, I agree. Time builds credibility, and by your utilisation of local stuff, you gain more and more strength, I think, within the local community and ongoing support.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, obviously with Ariki and Dave's presentation this morning, we have made a commitment to underwrite the event during its duration in Rotorua. However, I have been hearing around the table a few questions in terms of whether there's a need to up our ongoing support or review our ongoing support of the event. I wondered, Mr. Executive Officer, you've been listening to the presentation and also the tenure of some of the questions that have been raised. Have you got anything you wish to raise with us?
So through the Chair, I think Crankworks obviously primarily has been supported from Council through the underwrite, and that provides a level of certainty and de-risks the event. One of the things that's been highlighted quite clearly is the potential for decreasing public investment into the event, which may ultimately potentially cause some undermining of the nature of the event, which may actually impact on obviously its reputation. The thought that I had, and I think the Deputy Mayor raised the question of how does Council consider the underwrite? I think the question was, is it a loan, or is it a level of funding support for the organisation? So the thought that I had was that there was a potential for staff to work with Mountain Bike Events Limited to really look at the long-term future of the event, the likely projections as to a sustainable level of financial support, and report back to Council on options to achieve that.
I'd be interested to hear the views of the committee. I'm prepared to move along those lines, that staff do come back with a report on the ongoing funding and support that Council is giving to the event Crankworks and all the associated activities. So I'm prepared to move that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maxwell? It's open for discussion, Your Worship.
Yes, I do think that's a really good idea, and we need to look at the basket as well of events that we do support in kind, gratis for the Energy Events Centre, or buying a table to support an event. So I think if the paper was broadened, I'm totally with this event. We're right behind it, and I'd hate to see any change in our funding. They need funding certainty, and that's what I want them to be assured, that certainty is there. But I do think we need to look at, how do we either underwrite or invest in other events, and this one. The Chief Executive might say it's outside of the scope of this, but I want them to know that they've got our full support for the level of funding, and it could come back to us to consider more or less, or, yeah.
Do you want to comment?
If I could make a comment to that, we have effectively an events policy which is actually currently under review, and that will actually look at what are the types of events Council actually should be supporting out into the future. But this, I think, particular one is a little bit of an exception to that, and that it has already an established strategy for funding support that it appears does need some review.
No, I agree. I think we should stick to our knitting.
Yeah.
I don't want to muddy the waters. That obviously the existing policy is under review. This is site-specific in terms of Crankworks. Our community have got huge buy-in into the event. I'm delighted to hear, Ariki, that your reliance on local suppliers, we could have opened ourselves wide open to criticism in terms of ratepayer money going to something to support commercial enterprises outside the district. But the thing I'm really delighted with is how you've engaged with the young people in Rotorua, the school children, and also the volunteers that are coming out of the woodwork to when the call is made. So I ask councillors to read the motion that staff work with MBE to identify what is a sustainable level of public investment, report to council on options for how this may be best achieved. I've got a mover and a second. It's open for discussion. Mr. Waru.
Oh, kia ora, Mr. Chair. No, just wanted to make a comment. Let's not forget, since its inception, it's pulled in over $18 million for our community, our economic growth. 4.2 this last year passed. You know, let's not forget those things. Kia ora.
Other than for $75,000 for a 9-day event, 7-day event, I think we get more than value, and I'm strongly supportive, and I hope we do lean to providing something more. And the figures and what you just mentioned is highlighting is getting out to 64 countries in the world. I think it's great investment. Thank you.
I'm only concerned there about a perception that the baseline might be altered. I think the baseline must remain, and councillors should endorse that the current level are maintained, but we look at going forward. So I don't want the perception that we're...
I think the Chief Executive Officer's got that on board in terms of a report to council on options. So we've budgeted, Jeff, haven't we, for 75,000 with a $500,000 underwrite. That's already budgeted for. Anything additional or if it comes backwards, it will be as a result of that report. So I certainly getting the message around the table, the ongoing support is certainly a given. Councillor Gould.
Before you vote on your recommendation, may I suggest you put in words after public investment in Crankworks, spelt CRANKWORX, so that people, when the report comes through, know what they're talking about.
This is Crankworks report. Yeah. No, it's a me. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I'm again a little confused. I thought that the scope of this was much broader than just Crankworks. I thought it was on all events.
I've heard very clearly the Chief Executive saying that policy is under review, so that will come to us. This is specifically Crankworks.
This is just a focus on Crankworks, so I'm happy the word goes in. You're happy, Your Worship?
Yeah.
To reiterate exactly what your question was, Councillor Tipsel, that the focus be on Crankworks in terms of this report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So it behoves me to thank you, Ariki and Councillor Donaldson, and the team that are here today in support of Crankworks. You put on a fantastic event, Ariki, and I notice nominations are open for New Zealand's Heroes. And I don't think it's a laughing matter, but I think what you guys have done from scratch, taken the risk, rolled up your sleeves and got the job done, deserves national recognition. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, can it please be noted that I didn't take part in the discussion on the motion and didn't vote? Thank you.
Yes, duly noted. Okay, thank you. We'll take a couple of minute break so people can stretch and... Righto. I didn't want to get into Richard, you all ready to go? Yeah, if you'd like to come up the front and we'll, if you want a cup of tea and that, people, please help yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting is resumed. Our second presentation today is on Health, Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report for 2017-18. Welcome Richard, and he's got a presentation and some overheads to take us through, so welcome.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and good morning, councillors. I need to start with an apology, really, because I don't have any flash video clips and I don't have a cast of 1,000 to support me in my presentation, and I guess the topic isn't sort of quite as sexy or attractive as Crankworks. In fact, for many people, health and safety and wellbeing is probably seen as a pretty dull and boring topic and a sort of a necessary compliance factor to modern organisations. So I guess in making this presentation, I really want to highlight a couple of things. Firstly, that for me and for the team working in the health and safety field, and I think for the executive of the council, health and safety we see as critically important. Firstly, in terms of, keeping all of our staff, contractors and visitors safe and enhancing well-being. But secondly, I think as a council, as a public good organisation, and a large employer in our community, we have a sort of an added moral imperative, I think, to be doing things right in this space. So that's a sort of a preamble to say that really what I wanted to do was just briefly share with you a couple of slides that highlight some of the significant achievements that we've made in health and safety, because I think it's worthy of celebration. I think I can just click this one. No, this one. So this first slide summarises some of the key measures, I suppose. And while a little zero in the top left-hand corner of the table doesn't look particularly exciting, this is actually the one I'm most excited about. Sorry, the two zeros are the ones I'm most excited about. The second one is the one is particularly the most exciting. The first one says that we've had no major events that we've had to bring to the attention of WorkSafe in the last 12 months. And, for some of us worked through the horrors of a horrific dog bite that we had to one of our staff members a couple of years ago. We've had no repeat of something like that. So that's a really good achievement for us. The second one I think is even more remarkable. For the first time in the time I've been here anyway, we've had no lost time injuries in the last 12 months. So, I think that reflects the fact that, we've put a lot of work into preventative measures to enhance health and safety in the council. So our days, our days lost to injury obviously is zero as well as a result of that. We did have, whilst we had some work-related injuries, they were obviously minor injuries, and even those were down by 14%. And I'd say that this is against a backdrop of our reporting in these areas has increased. So it's a really significant increase. The bottom two, so let me just say those top 5 indicators are what I'd call lag indicators. So they record events after they've happened. The bottom 2 are lead indicators, so they reflect some of the work we're doing to prevent the stuff happening in the future. So near-miss reporting is one of those, and that's the fact that we've really lifted near-miss reporting, I think, is gratifying. And new risks identified. Now, the new Act, the Health and Safety at Work Act, at the heart of that is a shift from managing hazards to managing risks. So the fact that we've actually lifted even the number of risks that we're identifying reflects a much stronger focus on that, and reflects we've adopted both the spirit and the compliance of the new Act, really. I've just got one more slide I'll quickly run through and then open to questions. This is more about, I suppose, the cultural practice that's going on in the organisation. The new Act, as I'm sure you understand, really requires a much higher level of worker involvement and participation. We now have a network of 28 fully trained health and safety reps, and they have status under the Act. They are really the core network that triggers this higher level of staff involvement that I think we've achieved over the last 12 months. Our hazards and risks are regularly being assessed and monitored. A new development over the last 12 months was that we've now have an occupational health nurse comes regularly to the council and undertakes health monitoring, and a range of staff can see her around a range of other matters. So, and that's been an important step, I think, in encouraging well-being in the organisation. And the last thing I wanted to finish on was just to recap. We did talk to you about this at the time, but we did achieve, we were the first council, in fact, in New Zealand to achieve gold accreditation for work well, and whilst I haven't got a snazzy video, I do have the certificate to show you. So, and that's really concludes the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, congratulations, Richard, to you and the team. Obviously, your immediate staff and the 28 trained safety advisors out there on the forefront of the workplace are doing exactly what the Act prescribes. So to be recognised by, and they're a hard bunch to please at WorkSafe, that's for sure. So another fantastic accolade for the Rotorua Lakes Council. Questions, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Congratulations, Richard. Could we just go back to your first slide, please?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Days lost due to injury this year. How do you calculate 83.7% if you've got 0 this year? Surely it's 100%.
Good question.
Perhaps you can update the slide, it's even better.
Yeah.
Good
That's
call,
a good
Councillor
point.
Kent. Councillor Maxwell.
Thanks for the report. And, no, this is important and it's good that it's been followed up with. Can I ask for staff that it's not discouraging them from participating in things like sometimes our staff go running in a marathon or one of those 10-kilometre runs, or once a year some of the North Island councils have a sport day in March, and so do they count the injuries there or anything like that, or it's just part of the sporting world of New Zealand?
I would say, so we deliberately have a health, safety and wellbeing program in the council. And I would say that our focus on wellbeing has actually supported and encouraged greater participation of our staff in those sorts of activities, like the Ikadin or the Moonride mountain bike event. We have teams do that and so on. So, yeah, so rather than a fear of adding to our statistics inhibiting that participation, I'd say our wellbeing program has encouraged that level, increased levels of participation.
The Mayor?
It's great. That's incredible. I don't think I've seen a workplace that's had the lost time or the notifiable events at 0. So that is very significant. My question is, do we measure staff satisfaction? So we're talking about wellbeing, and I know that's rocking up to work and being well and fit for purpose. Where do we measure that sort of happiness in the workplace? And the other question is, well, you know, we do hear some snipes, and I don't accept it. I just see staff coming here very early in the morning, and many, you know, working to finish a task and leaving quite late but satisfied they've done the job. The other one is the workplace stations. So I see a lot of staff now, they've been relocated in now that the refurbishment is done within this building, and a lot with standing desks and things like that. Is that something that staff have asked for, and are they enjoying that new way of working?
So two questions really. The first one is about how we measure happiness.
Yeah, or satisfaction.
Satisfaction. I think the answer to that is sort of a number of ways, really. I'd say from a sort of a health and safety point of view, I think the first way we do that is through this network of health and safety reps, and we have a separate meeting with them once a month. So that's an avenue for them, quite independently of management structures, to report to us and feedback to us what's really going on in the organisation, how people are feeling, are they concerned about stuff. So that's the first mechanism. We do, it's not happiness per se, but we do track sort of employee engagement. We have an annual survey around that, and engagement levels are tracking at a pretty constant level, and we actively encourage our managers to be constantly lifting engagement. We also track, we have a employee assistance program operating in the organisation, and we do get regular statistics around that from the sorts of issues that people are using the service for. The statistics around that show that 75% of the reason, if you like, or that people are accessing the services for dealing with their own, what's happening in their personal lives, and only about 25% of it in the work life. And so we keep a track of what are some of the, even though it's a small part of that, the volume of the EAP work, what are the sorts of issues that appear to be surfacing there. Just so we can measure the mood of the staff and so on, and if we are concerned about issues, we never find, it's a completely confidential service, we don't know what individuals are using it or what their issues are, but it gives us an overview of what the sort of issues of concern are in the organisation. So that was the happiness one. The more sort of workstation sort of question, I think there's a couple of things I'd say about that. One is, firstly, I mentioned the occupational health nurse. So the occupational health service does provide ergonomic setups and so on, assessments, and we do that as soon as there's any hint or suggestion of discomfort for anyone, they can access that. We also provide people guidance that's readily available from WorkSafe and ACC on workstation setup anyway. In terms of, we are in a process of gradually refitting the organisation with more modern furniture and desks, which includes the ability to use standing desks. It's my experience, and I know some of the staff here actually use them, they can comment more, that staff love them, and it gives them the ability to change the way they work during the day and be on their feet more than just sedentary and so on. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report today. Does your figures include figures from the council-controlled organisations as well, or has they been taken out of the equation?
They've been taken out of the council figures, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Richard, for your presentation. Just regarding something that you just mentioned right at the beginning of your report, is the contractors' compliance. That I take it that you have a policy within council that ensures that subcontractors, for example, drain layers or CCOs, comply with your division's standard of health and safety. Do you have a person that actually goes out and checks, and do they have to supply written confirmation that their vehicles all comply, for example, their equipment complies and their attire complies?
I meant to say at the beginning of this little report that we do provide to the council full health and safety reporting through the Audit and Risk Committee. So I really wanted to come to this committee just to highlight, sort of the achievements, but I'm not wanting to avoid your question, Councillor. The answer is no, we don't have one person who does that. We actually have a whole little army of people who do that. So we do hold, it's an area that we've got quite a strong focus on, is managing the health and safety risks we have with contractors, including CCOs. And when I say we have a whole army of that, is the people who manage those contracts and contractors. have a responsibility in both not only inducting those contractors, ensuring that they have safety plans and stuff in place, but also monitoring them. We have a health and safety sort of information system called Vault, and it's used quite widely across local government. And we're just in the process of rolling out a sort of an app, a Vault. It's called Vault Inspect, an app that will enable, or that does enable, our contract managers and so on, including, for example, staff in Rob Keithley's team in the sport and rec area, to go out and use the app to capture and record what contractors are doing or not doing. And we not infrequently, less frequently than we have in the past, but not infrequently do we have incidents of them finding contractors not doing the right thing, and we have to address those issues.
If would like to make a quick comment.
Councillors, if I can make one comment, is that you're obviously responsible at the ultimately around the implications of this Act. I've got a slightly different area in that I'm both responsible but also accountable, and that's the way that councils work under this Act. So what I've done personally, and also on your behalf, is to actually go out and inspect personally a lot of the work that's been done to look at the safety. So on a monthly basis, I'm out looking at some of our own sites, but I'm also out over the last little while looking at the aquatic centre, looking at some of the work of Infocor as an example, to look at actually how they're undertaking street work and so on. So this Act and under Richard's leadership has really quite changed the way that we work in this organisation, and it's meant that for me personally that I'm not just actually relying on reports, I'm actually personally involved in looking on a regular basis as to the work that's been actually undertaken.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Would someone like to move that the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report 2718 be received? Moved Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Bentley. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried, and please pass on our congratulations to all staff involved, Richard. Another fantastic award for this very positive council. Right, we'll move to number 6 on the agenda, which is the operational report for June and July. We've done those minutes, haven't we?
Page 11.
Page 11. And the first group of reports, would someone like to move that the operational report for June, July 2018 be received? Councillor Hunt, Councillor Gould. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We start with Kai Whakahaere Māori. Tēnā koe, Monty.
Morena tātou, and thank you, Jim. Just firstly to apologise for Gina. She would be, I'm presenting her report today. She flew to Auckland last night, and there, as you well know,
she couldn't get
currently,
back.
No, she's fog bound. Expected to be back by 12 noon.
Yep.
So with that, the report is presented there. Just a couple of things to highlight, so I'll take it as read. I think you can see across this the range of activities that both Te Morangi and the range of activities that we're involved in consulting with is quite wide, obviously, providing not only technical advice now to various groups, but also in the Te Reo Māori space, highlighted, of course, with the opening of the playground. Then, of course, the number of events which we support and which I'm part of for that. And probably one of the things to highlight in the opening of the playground was that the fact that the group had managed to secure extra funding to be able to make that happen through the Ngāti Whakao Education Endowment Trust. On page 13 there, just on the events which are coming, the indication the TAU have been working, the Te Morangi unit have been working with the rest of the team pretty closely and developing the council's, not only the Matariki calendar, but also the those various ones that are listed there, and they're also involved in the Te Reo Wiki or Te Reo Māori Language Week, which is still to come. And then in 2 weeks' time, just under on the 15th of August, we have one of our guest lecture is going to be the former Mayor of New Plymouth, Andrew Judd. He will be here, and of course the invitation for councillors and others to be part of that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions as best I can.
Thank you very much, Monty. Councillor Tapsell? Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, tuataike te mihi o kia koe Monty mō tō tuahine a whiti, kua haere ia ki te kaihanga i te rangi. First of all, I just wanted to pass on our condolences for the passing of Monty's sister last week. And we attended the tangihanga and hope the family are all well now. Kia ora, Monty, the one I wanted to ask about was, I would have asked Gina, because I see some positive reports coming out about the homeless, and so I just wanted to make sure, Gina, okay now, re the positive things that are happening for the homeless situation?
Just with regard to homeless?
Yeah.
She's probably best to answer that. Certainly we're part of that, and I know the rest of the group, there's the answer is it's always a moving target, and I think others who are closer to the information than I am might be best to be able to answer. But certainly Gina has been at the forefront.
Positive comments coming now, so that's good.
I think we've been advised of that everything's been lodged and that everything's been worked through, and a positive outcome for the homeless facility in Pukewaroa Street has been reached. And I've seen it right across Facebook that everyone's absolutely delighted. Not much kudos for council from a certain sector of the community, but certainly I know, and I've acknowledged Gina, Metapika and Rosemary for the work that they have done behind the scenes that not always highlighted or we can respond to in the media. And we're open to have potshots taken against us all the time, but these three ladies in particular have been working along with the worship, along with staff to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and the risk to the ratepayers of Rotorua should a disaster happen would not fall on the ratepayers of this district. So I applaud each and every one of you. Councillor Raukawa Tate.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention, and I'm sure all the other councillors would have seen the communication that came through from somebody in Hamilton who manages the night shelter, and really it just shot home to us, you know, the realities of when you're in that space, working in that space, and the things that you do have to consider, and to make sure that those T's are crossed and the I's dotted. It was a very good letter, actually. I'm sorry it wasn't more widely circulated, but I hope councillors got it, because yeah, and I appreciate it. You know, somebody from the front line just saying, hey, this is the reality, and proceed with caution, basically. You know, it was a good one. Thank you.
Your worship, the Mayor.
So I just want to make a comment on the shelter is only one part of a whole strategy that Gina and Council were working with other providers much earlier through the year. People think this is the total solution. So Gina has been involved working with other providers on the Homeless Action Plan since the beginning of the year. So Council's been very central to understanding that it's a very complex issue, but she's done very well against some fairly fierce commentary on social media. Could I just also acknowledge the Matariki Whānau Day? Look, it was at Teletubbies Hill, and it was the most, well, we probably shouldn't call it that now, it's Tai Kaka on the background on the back of the new playground, but it was the most delightful start to a Matariki Day that will be part of our calendar every year, and people couldn't believe they got a free sausage. Rotary was there. It was a fabulous community day and great music and great entertainment, and actually it showed us that the use of that space has got great potential for other open-air concerts. And I think that's something that, we need to look at, because it was great acoustically, it was sheltered, and you were nestled in. And it was a delightful, delightful day. And I can see it'll grow every year as part of Matariki. But well done. There were so many visitors there, tourists, locals, just all mixing and mingling. And it was the way we do things here in Rotorua. It was quite delightful.
Monty, I wonder if you, on behalf of this committee, and I'm sure for everyone around the table, pass on our sincere thanks to the Ngāti Whakaue Education Endowment Trust for their kind donation of $10,000 towards Taikaka. That wouldn't have happened unless they had fronted, and to those who approached the Ngāti Whakaue Endowment Trust, who put an inordinate amount of effort into the city. Just pass on this committee's thanks to them. Whether your worship, you would put that in writing, that would be under your pen, would assist, and I'm happy to co-sign it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Wari?
Yeah, kia ora anō, te tia mana. Just more comments, really. Kai te mihi atu I te ahua o te reo ruatanga o te reporter nei. So there's, I've noticed there's some things there that I think it's great. Only little, but hakoa he iti he pōna me koe te kōrero. So, and I'm guessing that's coming from you and your leadership with the Aomorangi team. And kai te mihi atu I te rāhuatanga. Rotorua reorua, let's do it. And I think me tīmata ke mai I te nei taumata, if we want the rest of the organisation to sort of buy into it as well. So, kai te mihi atu, and to the strategy team, because I know there was a big push there to have that done. So yeah, loving that. Rotorua. It's not in here, but I just sort of better give you an update on, not too sure if you're all aware, myself and Gina attended the local government governance forum in Wellington. That's why I wasn't here the last meeting. And I think we were received well, and I think we were a bit of breath of fresh air there, really. And since then, I've received how many calls from how many councils wanting to have a bit more of a kōrero, and I'm referring them more to Jeff. So, kei te pai. But I just thought I just wanted to give you an update because Gina wasn't here to give you one. So, I rawe ngā kōrero, we did it in the true, as Stevie likes to say, Rotorua way. And I think I tū mana motu hake māua ko Gina. Huera, tērā.
Can you tell us why these other councillors are getting hold of you? Is it because of their perception of what we've done here in Rotorua with the partnership?
Partnership. It's the way we work in the partnership. And we had some pretty straight up and honest kōrero in front of there, and there were a few other staff members there that like Rick and Uya over there that were present as well, and I think it was just a different way of looking at things, a different way of working. A lot of them are in the governance groups and their various councils, and I think they've been trying to come up with some kind of way forward in their perspective, rohe. And there are some amazing things there too I learned from our whanaunga down south, and I think it was the Samhain District Council. Yeah. And just how they're working with tangata whenua, mana whenua down there. And I think it was really good just to share ideas, and it all came out saying they don't get to do that often, so it was really positive. And I think our contribution in terms of representing the Rotorua Lakes Council was received well.
Any other questions? Oh, Monty.
Yes, can I just make a comment just to the first part of your kōrero in terms of the part of the council strategy to normalise te reo Māori based on the commitments and decisions that you've made. But really, this is an initiative which is taken up by the strategy team, and perhaps JP or Una might like to comment.
Yeah, well, we were going to get Una and
okay.
And when JP comes up, to take us through the meanings and the small steps that Mr. Waru talked about.
Okay.
That have been
Can
taken.
I then, Jen, just add a bit of background?
Sure.
This is really, as I've indicated, what we're doing as an organisation to implement the strategies which you have agreed to around Rotorua and around how we are approaching normalisation of te reo in our organisation.
Thank you very much. Oh, one comment from Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, I think it's. I think we're assembling at 10:45 for 11 a.m. A presentation, but it will be circulated to you for your invitation. It's during the day. It's in the day. Thank you. Yes, it's as part of the lecture series that we've had.
Okay, I wonder if we could have that diarised to our diaries, please, and you can respond RSVP, whatever you want to.
And
Thank you very
lastly,
much, Monty.
lastly, the invitation, of course, for councillors to join our next Noho Marae, which I think is in the second week of September.
Okay.
And that will be distributed.
Yeah, we can have that diaried as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move now to the strategy group, which is JP. And to kill two birds with one stone, maybe it's an opportunity before we start, JP, that we go through what we're doing in terms of this wonderful drive to modernise and depict our community in true spirit of tātou tātou, I think, what I've read. So, and I know you and Una have been at the forefront of this this development.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and probably follows on from comments of Monty about, you've agreed a direction for us as a council, and it's just normalising it within to our normal business operations. And Una has been working on her improvement plan for the governance area. There was a discussion at the last meeting about agenda timeliness and improvements in that space, and this is just another one of those actions that Una has taken on board within her team. So I should stop there and just let Una take you through what's that meant for the agenda formats and obviously our plans. So over to you, Una.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. I just wanted to draw your attention to the long-term plan hard copy version that we've just put in front of you today. We just received these, I think it was Friday afternoon, so they're quite almost hot off the press, but they have been on our website and available since the 1st of July when the plan was adopted on the 30th. What we're starting to see, I suppose, is some questions that are coming up and conversation that is starting around the imagery. And I think the question back to people who we have conversations around our imagery is well, what do you think all the imagery is about? And I think this just goes to show how this particular imagery is a really good starting point for conversation. And our in-house artist and graphic designer, Sally Smythe, and hopefully she's still sitting here, has put a few words together just to explain, I suppose, from her point of view as the artist about what the imagery was depicting, and I'm just going to read a little bit of that out. As we've said before, this does show and attempts to show how, as a team, as elected members, we are using the imagery to show our shared communication and reflecting our commitment to the fulfilment of our Rotorua journey. The two hei tiki are representative of tangata whenua and tangata tiriti and the whakapapa ancestral histories of each. They are placed in symmetry and they're reflective of each other, yet each with their own distinctive histories and knowledge. They are engaged in conversation, teaching and learning from each other. The hei tiki are placed above representations of Mokoia Island and the lakes, and again representative of the land and lakes of our district as a whole. The placement of the Heitiki here speaks of guardianship of our natural resources as a source of life for our district, and the care that must be taken in looking after the land and the people that live within our boundaries. We do have copies of that little summary of what the artwork means and depicts, so that when you are having conversations out there in the community and you have asked people what it means, you can also share what it was meaning and trying to depict from our artist perspective and trying to encapsulate everything that was the LTP journey. So I suppose leading on from that, the governance team, as part of their journey in looking at how we as a small team within council can contribute to the bicultural journey, have been looking at opportunities to include te reo in the works and the papers that we share with yourselves and with the communities. And so we thought that launching into a new LTP and with the imagery we had with the LTP was also really good to reflect and take through into all of our committees. And you will see in front of you today a revised agenda cover, and you will see on that the introduction of some te reo translations for our sort of key headings and guidance through a committee report. Each committee within the next month, as we roll out our monthly journey, you will see a new agenda cover and the same format coming through in each of the committees. So thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions of Una and the graphic artist? Councillor, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it is brilliantly done. There's no question about it. And I support the idea that it's encompassed within the document. Mr. Chairman, I am disappointed to some extent, though, that it's on the front page. This council does have a coat of arms. And I would not like to see the council move away from the coat of arms, and I would have liked to see our coat of arms in the front and our new graphics on the inside. It has definitely got a point. I'm a traditionalist in history, and if you have a look at our coat of arms, it shows a farmer and a Maori working together with all the other aspects that's been involved. So if you want to change the coat of arms and come up to be modernised in the 2020s for the future, let's sit down and have the debate. So please, Mr. Chairman, it's no reflection to the artist and to what our staff member has done. It's just that I took an exception to seeing that on the front cover and not a coat of arms of the Rotorua District Council, Rotorua Lakes Council. That's all I have to say about it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time.
Well, I think that's worthy of response because, no, I'll let Una respond.
Just my response there is that there is no intent at all to undermine or not use the coat of arms. The coat of arms continues to be used in all of our legal documentation and anything that is signed or needs the council seal. I think if you go back and have a look at all of council's long-term plans, strategies, anything like that, the coat of arms has not been forefront of any of that imagery for probably a good 15 to 20 years. So it is not, it's not undermining that at all, and there is still a time and a place for the use of that.
Councillor Rokawate, thank you, Una.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do want to thank the artist, our Sally, because I think this actually should just be the norm. You know, one day we will get to that. We won't raise an eyebrow when we see something like this. It'll be just acceptable. This is actually my expectation. I mean, I did hear Mr. Martin, and kia ora to you, Bob, but the debate has been had in this country so many years ago. So, you know, this is, but as I say, this is actually quite stunning. And with Sally's permission, or I don't know whose permission, I'd like to sort of blow it up and use it and put it on my wall in a home that I'm just renovating right now, because it would go so well. But this is actually should be the norm. This should be our expectation these days of anything that comes out of any local government or central government. This is really just the norm. This is the way we do things, not only in Rotorua, but in New Zealand. And the expectation is from people who in the past never saw themselves depicted in any way, in their culture, their language. They never saw it, never heard it. The entitlement was for others, but not for Māori, and certainly not for our Pacifica relations as well. So I'm afraid this is just, for me, in future, my expectations will always see something like this. So, but as to the debate, long been had, it's history, it's gone.
Yeah, I got to tend to agree with you, Councillor Kawate. From my point of view, I saw this imagery for the first time on Tuesday, and the first words that come out it says, "I love it." And I got a feeling from the staff when we did our run through that they were a little bit hesitant, a little bit reticent about what the reaction would be. And I agree with you that it's just business as usual. One thing that impressed me, that if I'm at a public gathering and they say, "Oh, what's that new design you've got?" And in 4 words it means 2 people, 1 place. And the talk of having a conversation, engaging over an imagery of our lakes in Makoa Island, the brown imagery in the middle. And the other thing that I liked about it is that sort of imagery reflects what we're doing with the workplace imagery around the building as well, sort of fitting into this type of thing. But I was delighted when I got my agenda that it is now moving towards, as Mr. Wadu said, it's small steps we're taking, Mr. Wadu, but it's coming out in a bilingual format, which I'm also delighted with. That this is what the partnership has brought, a realisation that we are working together as one people. Well, I'm all for it. Are there any other questions? Your Worship?
I think it's great that we can have a discussion, Councillor Martin, and the crest remains the crest, and at citizenship ceremonies and at all formal ceremonies, when I wear the chain, I always talk about the crest, and that's a very important conversation too. But I'm very proud of this and think that what does this document contain? It contains the aspirations of our community. And to me, a document like this, if it did have the crest and it hasn't for years and years and years, I want people to pick it up and read what's inside. And this is like an art award for the yellow pages that they used to run. And people used it and loved the art on the outside because it told 1,000 stories. And I think this is telling our journey now, expressed in the partnership, and it's beautiful. We should celebrate its beauty and not lose the significance of our crest either. And you can do both. And I congratulate you for this. I just want to comment, there was a presentation earlier, and I wished it had this on it rather than that sort of mouth coming out of the geothermal. So we need to work out where that gets used.
I'll just respond to that as well. The next thing on the on the list is to look at our suite of PowerPoint presentations and slide. And there's only so many hours in the day for the team working on all these improvements.
Needs to be highlighted is, Sally, you're going to have to get copyright on this pretty quick, because already requests have gone in, because inside the front cover is a blank sheet, and I said to Una just an aside to the meeting that I'd love to remove that and have that framed and put in my house. Now, Metapik is talking about it being a feature wall, because the colours are just so reflective of everything that our community encompasses. So I say hats off to you, Sally, and well done. It's not the first thing that you've done that has been recognised. And so are there any other questions? Councillor Maxwell finally. On the logo. listen.
Getting their reaction. The other one is when we have
And explain it. You won't now. All lifelike. Okay. All right, I think we'll move on. I thank you, Una, for the explanation, and to you, Sally. We'll come back to page 13, the strategy group. You'll see there the submissions to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Waikato Regional Council. Unless there's any questions on there, we'll take those as read. Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you, I did have a question on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's response, and that was in the area of emergency management on page 31. So this was a discussion at one of the CDEM meetings that I subbed in for Her Worship at, and it went back to I think the KEG Working Party to discuss it. So just for clarity's sake, we will still retain and pay for our own resource in Linda's position, but the costs of emergency management from this, do I take it, it's a flat targeted rate across every rating unit in the region?
Through Mr Chair, that's my understanding of the intention, and it covers the group activity. Stavros might again just be able to just confirm the split that we have between our local CDEM capability and capacity that we believe is important, and obviously the regional or group level activity.
Stavros, do you wish to comment? In your report. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is 5.13, modernising the voting project. Rick is up there with JP, as you can see, and Rick's been at the forefront of developments in this area. Is there anything you wish to highlight, Rick, in terms of, I understand there's a bill in the House for some trial areas of smaller, would you like to make any comment?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair. I think if I just recap back to 2016, there were a number of councils, including Rotorua Lakes Council, that were interested in trialling online voting. There was some work done around that, there were particularly around concerns around security. The government of the day decided that they didn't want that to continue. They had concerns around security and also lack of public engagement. The new government that we have are interested in trialling online voting in local government elections. There's been a working party created and been doing some good work around what's required and looking at, I guess, challenges. One of them's New Zealand Post and their remembering it's a postal vote and the challenges that face New Zealand Post getting voting papers out, more importantly voting papers in, and that's declining. Also risk, there's a timeline aspect that we're falling into now with only 14 months to the 2019 election. Back in 2016, the trial that was intended did not include Auckland City because of their large population, 2 to 3 million, to trial online voting was quite a high risk, whereas smaller councils, there's less risk around that. The bill going to Parliament, online voting can happen now, that's available. The bill is to allow online voting trial for a subset of voters or part of a community. So for instance, hypothetically, a trial could take place on Waiheke Island or overseas offshore voters. So there are still a number of local authorities pursuing the possibility of trialling for the 2019 election. There's others that will look at the possibility of trialling following the 2019 elections, maybe in a by-election if one happens, or if one is needed, and maybe a full trial 2022. The government of the day that we have now also pretty keen to have it as a national trial. So they're keen on looking at or giving local authorities that opportunity to contribute and trial it as one. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions of Rick regarding this, Your Worship?
I'm glad that's happening. It is in our local government New Zealand manifesto and has been carried forward, and I'm on that governance group, and certainly something needs to budge there. And I'm just reminded after our recent floods where we've displaced 90 families, where would their voting papers go? But they are all using online to keep in touch with the navigation service and the flood recovery. So I think that is something that we've all got to be aware of around New Zealand, that now you can't assume everybody's still in their residence, but they are still paying rates for their residence. And so we are still supportive of that. This council hasn't discussed it. We did last time and agreed to be part of the pilot. So I suppose when the opportunity comes, it'd come back to us. But your local government, New Zealand Council, is very supportive of this, to reiterate.
Rick, it would have to be pretty soon, wouldn't it? You've highlighted it's only 14 months to the 2019 election. We'd have to get a pretty strong indication of which areas are going to be trialled and which areas aren't. Are we relying on central government for that?
No, there's still working parties working on that. Mayor Chadwick is correct that a report would need to come back to council for council to decide what they want to do with that. Yeah.
Councillor Gould.
Thank you for your report, Mr. Dunn, today. On the bottom of page 13, you indicate it's not viable for the this type of election process for the election for 2019, but it looks like it may be probable for 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a good question, thank you. The viability that was mentioned there comes around affordability. There was a request from the working party to central government to co-fund, and that didn't fall into their 100-day strategy, so that wasn't available, and that was quite a big decision to move away from that because of the affordability that would have been placed on local authorities around the cost of it in total.
Councillor Kumar, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Right, thank you very much, Rick. We'll watch the space. The next on page 14 is the big moves and the people portfolio.
Mr. Chair, just to let you know, we have now lodged our applications for funding through the Provincial Growth Fund. If you recall, we received the seed funding of $811,000 just over a month and a half ago. So we've been working extremely hard, and we're encouraged certainly by the Minister and then by MB's staff to get our application in as soon as possible. So we've met the first two milestones related to that $811,000 funding and have lodged our applications. As you're aware, there's a co-governance group who oversee the thinking around the forest. So that application for us or from us is in partnership with Mana Whenua, umbrellaed by CNI, so that's for the forest application. And the lakefront, it's an application by the Rotorua Lakes Council with the support of various partners, including Gifted Reserves, obviously, for the lakefront. So it's been quite an exceptional 6 weeks, a significant amount of work. We're very lucky to have had the advisory group we've had for the lakefront, chaired by Sir Bob, and the support, particularly, and I'd like to highlight Te Aroha Lakes Trust representatives in that space have been hugely important in making sure we've got a clear picture forward. And then we obviously have our relationship back to the Gifted Reserves Committee as well. So you can see there I've noted that in addition to lodging our applications, there's also been a meeting with the Gifted Reserves Protocol Committee. So they've looked at the reserve management plan that we have in place. So that was last amended back in 2006. So there's a number of changes that are required to that reserve management plan in a consultation process that will come through as a recommendation to the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee next week. So again, internally it's been a sort of a whole council approach. A lot of thanks to Rob and his team who have worked very hard in this space as well. So those applications have come together, and again we've been very much supported, and it's appreciative of the confidence that we've had with our partners. There's been a lot of confidential private investment information that's been shared with us that is essential because obviously the Provincial Growth Fund is about economic growth. So they've shared that information which has gone into those applications and have now been lodged. So I'm happy to answer any broad questions in that space. The last point you can see there is just part of that ongoing work is there's a bit of geotech work being undertaken currently on the lakefront. Again, it just helps us get some clarity about the feasibility of locations or potential structures within that lakefront. So again, just getting that information is critical for the planning process.
Thank you, JP. Any questions there? Move on to the People's Portfolio. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add into this agenda that there's a healthy, affordable housing public talk coming up. That'll be held at the Te Aka Māori on the 17th of August at 5 p.m. I'll be talking on behalf of the Council just about the importance of healthy and affordable housing within the Sustainable Living Strategy and how that will help to achieve the Council's Vision 2030 goals. So I just wanted to make sure that councillors are aware that that's coming up. And we'll also have the Director of Passive Housing New Zealand there to talk about the science-based approach to having a healthy home.
On our invited diary, please. Thank you. I think the dices have certainly moved a lot on the homeless action plan since this report was written, so I think we should just take that as read. I mean, we were all fully informed by email the other day in terms of the latest update. So unless there are any questions, Councillor Kumar, you have a question?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairperson. My question is around, we're talking about social housing and we're talking about affordable housing. I think what we've not been able to nail down, and it's probably a very vague question as well, is what is affordable housing? Is there a price to affordable housing? Can people say, hey, look, this housing is $250,000. Is it a turnkey $350,000 project for a young couple to walk in or people that can afford? There's just, all we're talking about is very vague, special and first entry level, but there's no pricing.
JP.
Through Mr. Chair, and I think Councillor Kumar's raised the fundamental issue about and why the government is so focused on the discussion about affordable housing is the fact that it's not. Land is expensive and housing construction prices make new homes exceptionally expensive, and the distance between incomes and the price of those homes continues to stretch. So that's why there's so much policy in that space about how you bridge that gap and give people those opportunities. So I think there's going to be more and more reliance on the social housing and social housing that's affordable rent-wise as well, and that's certainly a space that council can be in to a degree and is in, and potentially increasing that with partners as well. So that's our space. As far as actual affordability is concerned, it's mainly a government approach to that, how you apply the Kiwi savers and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, the big conundrum.
Yeah, Councillor Kumar raises a very good point, because an affordable home in Auckland is totally different to an affordable home in Rotorua, Palmerston North, Christchurch, Dunedin. So I think the parameters that you talked about, JP, in terms of central government with subsidies and KiwiSaver and welcome home loans and all sorts of things, until they're actually available and on the market, nobody can actually put a finger on it. But I hear what you're saying. The uncertainty is something that we're trying, and I'd like to see eliminated from a community point of view, so these first home buyers can relocate to Rotorua and develop Rotorua. So, good question. The next one is the business support group with Mr. Collet. Where is he?
He's up.
Oh, gee, he's quick. Okay, Mr. Collet, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take my brief report as read and any questions.
Questions of Mr. Collet regarding the business support group? Your Worship?
That's all too brief, Thomas. Did it go that smoothly? That there's no exceptions or risks that we should be made aware of?
I think in my experience it went as smooth as one of these things can go. It's a significant undertaking to implement a new finance system, and we are paying people that we need to pay, and the system is a significant improvement in financial reporting and the information available to our organisation. It's still, we're just in a bedding down phase, and we continue to, as I call, polish it to get it to where it needs to be, because like all these things, you implement, but then you still continue to reinvest in it as you learn more about how to use it and improve on it.
And did it come in within budget, phase one?
Yes, it was as per expected, but it's definitely had its fair share of challenges as we've gone through this journey. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Thomas, just a question. Further on, it's going to be brought to the attention of the committee, the government's national planning standards for requiring councils to basically rewrite their entire district plans over the next 5 years. Does the One Council project have the ability to handle that side of things in terms of being able to click on planning maps and bring up rating information and so on, or is that something totally separate?
It might be something totally separate, but one of the reasons we are transitioning from ozone to One Council is, and as we call it, is it's the anywhere functionality. So the whole purpose of this is not only to modernise and rebuild our business processes as we implement these new systems and replace it, but as we do so, it's actually moving to technology that would probably move us from the 1990s to the current, and making more information available to our community to use. And so that is one of the big benefits. And most of that will actually be seen in the next phase, which is phase 2, which we call our property and rating functionality. And hopefully we'll start seeing things like consents online and those sorts of things where the community will interact. My apologies, my phone. Will interact with us online rather than obviously some of the current methods that they have.
He's just bought morning tea for the executive group with his phone going off at a council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Kent. Thank you. There's no further questions.
That was probably the plumber I was expecting a call
Oh,
from.
whatever.
But anyway, thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to the infrastructure group with Savros Michael. Savros, delighted again with the output in terms of your report. It clearly states what you're doing, where you're doing it, why you're doing it. And I must say I'm delighted that the request I made at the last meeting on the rural road seal extensions indicating Dunkirk Road, Mangamingi Road and Tikopia Road is now in writing. Mrs. Trump is here. But I also see the Rotorua update and the Mamaku installation of the ozone. So if you'd like to take us through any salient points or updates you would like to Oh, there is one thing, Stavros, I'd like you to comment on. I heard a rumour that the Tino Road NZTA were not supportive of us going through with that project. I wonder if you could put that to bed, because I understand that is completely the opposite. The Mayor's also heard it.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple of things with regards to NZTA programs. Just to remind, all councillors that we are currently working with NZTA on a number of intermediate programs, the Sala and Tarawera. I expect these tenders to go out, any time now. The tenders, should be ready to go. The funding is confirmed, it's embedded into the systems. We've got a central corridor, which we are working with them. It's a funding confirmed and work from there. We're also working on 2 operational safety programs like the Rongotaha roundabout, which I'm expecting them to continue to work because it's not part and parcel of the national funding. I suppose a comment you may have heard is it's about a business case for the 4-laning from Miles to the airport, to the best of my knowledge. And as a matter of fact, I'm meeting with NZTA representatives on Monday to go over, some of these, continued works. The business case will not go to NZTA until September for that, funding. It's true that the business case has been agreed, and all relevant parties, including the consultants and the NZTA senior officers, have agreed that 4-laning and 4-laning in the very near future is the only viable option for that corridor. It's also true that a project like that will have to compete with a SHIP, which is a State Highway Investment Programme at the national level. But NZTA's board will receive that report in September to make this kind of decisions. So, to the best of my knowledge, all these actions are in progress at the moment. I haven't heard from anyone from the agency otherwise, and therefore I can't make any other comment than what just has made.
All your leads are direct from the agency. Thank you. And you met on Monday with the agency. There was no change in or any hint of a shift?
No, sir.
You wish? Would you like to comment?
I actually think you've said it all, Stavros. There's rumours out there that this isn't going ahead. I think that's just scaremongering. I was at the workshop with NZTA and it was a very good workshop, and we were very clear that you had to have that step in order to develop the business case, and the business case is required by any government. So I'm very clear that we're moving along in the right direction.
So our focus is on track, and that's the main thing. So coming back to your report, Stavros, anything you would like to highlight?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will obviously our report tries to identify and make commentary on a whole range of programs and activities we are undertaking. I'll leave it as read and happy to take any questions. I would like to focus attention on 2 key areas for elaboration today. Firstly, can I respond to your earlier question about the civil defence and the regional funding?
Yes.
Again, I think we've said that in the past, we've said again, we are part of the regional group in terms of civil defence. We are a member of that group by statutory requirements. The funding for that participation has been, until last financial year, contributed by individual councils, and now there is a regional levy to be applied, target rate for that. It simply is just a matter of logistics of funding that group participation. The second aspect is the emergency management Bay of Plenty, which is a shared service approach. Our position has been and continues to be that we will participate in the shared service provided we see a real net benefit for this organisation, and at this point in time, we cannot identify such a real net benefit, and if we do, we will report back to this council. So I'll leave it at that. The 2 key areas I would like to report to you specifically today, and I would like to thank, first of all, Hilda, can we put that PowerPoint, please? I'll thank the chair of the Rural Community Board, Shirley, who sits next to me here. I think consistent with your directions in the LTP and previous deliberations, we have now started this week the delivery of waste collection and recyclable services in the rural areas that have been encompassed by the LTP deliberations. We have a significant milestone in that Monday the 31st, on this Monday was, the delivery day. We'll start the process, start this process this week. These rural communities will receive the service throughout the month of August, and the targeted rate will start applying from beginning of September. In effect, we're giving those communities 1 month free service, which help us also to fine-tune our operations. I think sort of, as I said earlier, there was a huge participation and assistance by the Rural Community Board and led by the leadership of Shirley on that. And again, remind all of us that it's quite important that collection services contribute to your overall strategy of providing reliable, sustainable, and cost-benefit waste collection recyclable services for the whole of the district, and this is just one effort to continue to harmonize it. These are the areas that have been, the new service has been rolled out, and some 760 sets of bins were delivered over the last few weeks, and they have been in place. Just some interesting statistics for you, some information for you. To see what it involved.
Good.
We have received 25 positive comments and 4 unhappy comments. As I said, one property has rejected their bins but continued to pay the rate, the targeted rate. 18 inquiries for service, and including from Tapo. I'm not sure what that means. Some confusion maybe, okay. Shirley might be able to talk about it. Again, based on our learnings from 2 years ago, when we rolled out the urban service, we had an error rate of about 10%. We are now down to 2%, which I would like to attribute it to us, our ongoing learning from experience. And as I said, there are some other implications, which means the areas that hitherto had the ability to deliver free waste bags to the landfill and other services are free of charge. Obviously now with the rolling out of rural service will no longer apply to. Just a very interesting, might be interesting to all of you, the rounds covering those new rural areas cover some 360 kilometers of rounds. By comparison, all our urban rounds is 150 kilometers. So, you can see sometimes where extending the service into, the widespread areas cost a bit more money, but you have made a strategic decision to harmonize the targeted rate across the whole district. Yep. And therefore, I think that is, it sort of balances out the overall cost of the whole service. So perhaps I would let Shirley sort of talk a little bit about that, because she's been in the front phase of that delivery. And personally, I'm very, very grateful for her support and the board's support in that respect. And my staff also feel very comfortable with that support. And as I said, it seems that we are on a good track. Thank you, Shirley.
Welcome, Mrs. Trumper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just clarify Taupo a little bit. Rotorua, as you would know, boundary both Taupo and Rotorua rating base, and a number of residents south of Ellen Road, namely River Road, want a service. And so the contractor, and they're in Taupo, and Taupo Council do not provide any waste service outside of the urban boundary. And Rotorua needs to stand up and take a bow, because you are caring about your waste minimisation. And it is well noted that the contractor has been approached on numerous occasions to provide a service, and that has to work in with his contract with Taupo Council and with Rotorua. So that's where that particular interest comes from. Cool. So the 18 inquiries do not include River Road, and we have, and that has only just come through the Facebook page. the personal messages to myself has been more significant, and there is a little bit of angst out there in the service rollout that isn't, there are some areas that have been excluded at this time, and I will say that Stavros's team and the contractor are just working over time to try and get things sorted. So I'm hopeful this time next year that we will have a full service across the entire rural network, and that's our aim, including metal roads. So the other thing is that there is some angst about the free drop-off points that allowed some of the Ngākuru residents to use the landfill at no extra charge, so long as they used the red bags. That service was always going to cease once the rural rollout was commenced, and that was made very clear at the 3 meetings that I initiated, and it was made very clear by the council officers at those meetings.
Well done.
So apart from that, unless anybody's got questions.
What a great story of now people from outside our district wanting to tap into the success and the service provision that we're giving. So congratulations to everybody, Stavros. This is a good news story. You got any questions of Stavros on the rollout? I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I've just
Your
got,
Worship?
yeah, just the 760 bins delivered, it said there, but 900 in Rotorua. Just got, what's the total figure?
So when the original mapping was done way back in, if I said about 18 months, 2 years ago, all properties were identified. However, over time, the mapping when they were doing the service contract was narrowed down because the contractor, the trucks were owner operated and they would not drive on metal roads. So the number of bins delivered have been to that set map when the initial contract was signed.
And yet our rubbish truck used to go down those dirt roads, but never mind. Okay. Right, any other questions on that? Okay, thank you very much, Shirley, for your input. And Shirley, one of the things you did through the community board, the rural community board, the 3 roads, Dunkirk, Mangamangi and Tikopia, are now added to the scheme that's based on our council criteria. Stavros?
So I'm going to respond to that. Dunkirk and Mangamangi, Dunkirk was done for maintenance reasons because it was quite a significant stretch of road that is breaking up with the heavy traffic on it. Mangamangi was held over from last year, so a bulk of the budget will do Mangamangi. Tikopia Road currently will be discussed between the Rural Community Board and the operations team because we want to make sure that it is best bang for buck.
Excellent. What having that support beside you, Stavros, must be a huge fill-up to you and the team.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think working with both the Rural Community Board and the Lakes Community Board is extremely valuable because obviously they've got the ear and the feelings of the local communities, and obviously our decisions need to reflect that, that feeling, and it's very important for us to continue to work with them. Hilda, do you have the other next one? Okay. The other element of my focus, I suppose, is just to give you a quick update as to where we are with the Nogotaha, not just Nogotaha, I suppose the recent flood event we had towards the end of April. I think the information in front of you there is self-explanatory. Obviously, it has a significant rainfall event, but that generated a significant volume in terms of our civil defence and ongoing welfare activities. Important things is that over the last 2-3 months, we have over almost 1,000 welfare outreach visits. 94 homes were declared insanitary, and obviously, you know, a number of people were assisted through the process of claiming through the insurance, go through the Ministry of Social Development, the MBE, and so on. And we had a significant impact on our infrastructure, which is ongoing and will be with us for, I would say, for the next 12 to 18 months. Again, just a few pictures to remind all of us that what the events now look like. You know, they were significant events, and that is something that we should, you know, keep in mind, that we are always subject to this kind of events, you know, especially with the climate change and the weather impacts. Again, you know, this is a quick presentation of the map. You would see the, you know, the blue crosses on the top around Nogodaha reflects basically the upper Nogodaha catchment area heading to State Highway 5, towards State Highway 36, you know, in Nogodaha. And of course, the red, you know, heat map indicates where the biggest, you know, problems were experienced. But we also experienced problems in the central city. And you can see, you know, with the mapping there. Gradually, the insanitary notices are being reduced. To the best of my latest information, I've got at this point in time, we're down to 77 insanitary notices. We had about 440 welfare cases have been closed from the initial 924. The mayoral fund receives 46 applications. And the funds received to date has been $55,000, dispersed and granted $43,000, and we continue to work with the affected members of the community. Just a point of view to note, which was a little bit surprise to me too, I suppose. Last night I went to the Hamurama Residents Association AGM, which is a reasonable number of people there to talk about a number of things, including civil defense. And there were a few people who received the assistance of our civil defense welfare teams, the navigators, and they were extremely supportive and grateful that although their damage and suffering was not huge, however, they found it very reassuring and helpful that there were people employed by the council contacting them and helping to navigate through insurance claims, banking claims, you know, ministry claims, you know, welfare claims, and so on. And they were very grateful for that. We worked with them last night to help them establish what we call a local community response plan to basically set a network to help themselves in events like that until we are able to get to them. So I think these are all indications that we are learning from events and we are expanding and enhancing our services. Happy to take any other comment, any questions with regards to my report.
Can I just, I've had a number of people approach me, Stavros, from the Nogotaha area, the vicinity of where the major event was. Notwithstanding there were impacts elsewhere in the district, and I don't think we should undersell the impact on Rotorua and York Street and other places within the city, the impact. But I need to mention and place on record the thanks of the people, and particularly in Western Road, on the leadership that Bruce Horn showed by actually going door to door and talking to individual ratepayers about their needs, wants, and then making sure that welfare followed up this, or they just speak so highly of Bruce's leadership and ownership of the whole incident. And I think I need to pass that on at the committee level. Are there any other questions, Your Worship?
Yes, just to let councillors know, at our regional zone meeting, we were notified by McDem that there's a review underway, and with Anne Patillo, and that's just about, not the review of Nogotaha, but the review of McDem's response and support. And the other question for you, Stavros, was I recall there was a funding shortfall for road and restoration with the huge damage that we had at Rere Whakaitu, the bridge, and Tarawera. Have we had any response from the Crown on that?
Your Worship, yes, we did. From the Minister directed your request, to the NZTA.
Yeah.
NZTA came to us and we are working with them, and actually we are undergoing at the moment with them a significant procedural procurement and technical audit between now and mid-September. And unfortunately for them, their policies to fund the shortfall gap was about $1.6 million. We receive about $3.6 million from NZTA as a right, as a funding assistance rate. We need to demonstrate to them that we have absolutely no ability to raise a local share. And that becomes a little bit problematic when we have an ability to do things that are not considered to be absolute emergency. So we'll continue to work with them, but I think it'd be fair to say that our fund is unlikely we're going to get an additional, $1.6 million on top of what they have offered already.
Councillor Gould.
Chairman, can I ask a question about page 19, or am I too soon?
No, carry on.
Item 10, Eastern Water Supply Development Support. I note that there is a water tank at the top of Forest Place. You saying that we have to put in an extra tank above that for that new subdivision which is going at the top of that hill?
Councillor Gould, through you, Mr. Chair, as you're aware, the council, through its LTP, is developing a spatial plan. The spatial plan identifies area for future residential developments, and through that, we are looking into all areas of potential development and growth, and we planning catchment improvements to solidify and identify what sort of future infrastructure will be required to that effect. If you look into the Leanmore area on top of Tarawera, as you say at the moment, the supply for that comes from Wapa area. We are able to provide for the new sub-developments in the near future. But in the long term, we really need a larger reservoir to supply all that growth area if it eventuates as the special plan anticipates. So we're doing all this work in conjunction with the current needs, the intermediate needs, and the long-term future needs for that. So in the meantime, we will boosting the water supply through additional pumping, but in the long term, we need to have a large reservoir to serve that spatial plan area.
So current subdivision proposals are capacity is there for them.
That's correct.
You're just thinking of the long term.
Correct.
Yep. Councillor Gould, any further questions? Thank you. Okay, unless there are any further questions on Stavros's report, which takes us right through to page 21. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Stavros, for your report. And I'm going back to page 16, where the Amahouse Street is going to cease to be a NZTA-funded avenue. And once that state highway status is revoked, what plans does this council have to divert present state highway traffic to the alternative route? For example, are you going to bring in vehicle weight restrictions or some other compliance formalities?
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. It's quite important to highlight one fact that obviously is not always well understood. The traffic assessment and modelling on all the traffic that uses Amahouse Street east to west and west to east, it's identified 90% of it is local distribution traffic. It is not an interstate, interregional traffic. The project we're working with NZTA at the moment, and it's conditional to us agreeing to before we accept the State Highway 30A under our responsibility. It is that we will maintain the capacity of the roads, we will improve the safety aspects of the roads, and we will improve the presentation of the road to be consistent with the CBD. I have asked NZTA to start a strategic plan to improve the section of the road of State Highway from Himo Gorge roundabout all the way to Sala. And once that NZTA identifies such works, it is possible, and I'm not saying it's going to happen in the near future, that may regulate certain restrictions in heavy traffic going through Amahouse. But that will be years down the road. I don't anticipate that to be part and parcel of that activity at the moment.
Councillor Bentley, anything further?
Could I have a supplementary on that? Where on earth, Stavros, did this rumour come from that Amaho would go to one lane.
That's never.
And how do the people who work along that road, when will they be informed of where the plan will land?
Mr. Michael?
Look, I don't know where the rumour comes from. I suppose I can only guesstimate that, people interpret that the objective of integrating or improving the connection between Rotorua Central and the CBD through a better urban design environment and a safety environment as necessitating the need to reduce the amount of traffic. We haven't actually ever made a statement that will be reduced to one lane. We said we will do some traffic calming, but it doesn't mean reduction of traffic capacity.
Amazing.
The timing for more detailed engagement with the locally affected parties will be over the next couple of months, where OPUS, who is working on behalf of for NZTA and funded by NZTA, is developing a couple of final design concepts of that area, and at that point in time, we'll go to individual, businesses there, consult with them, introduce any final changes that need to be introduced with a view of tendering this work early in the 2019.
Thank you very much for putting that one to bed, another element of scaremongering in the community. Any other questions of Stavros's report? Thank you, Stavros, and thank you, Shirley, for your efforts in terms of waste management. Now move to page 21, the operationals group with Henry. And Henry, if there are any items there that you'd like to highlight, and welcome Rob Keithley as well. From a sport and recreation point of view, going to give us an update on what's happening at our exciting new aquatic centre. Henry.
Kia ora, Mr Chair, and kia ora koutou, councillors, te tātou and board members. Look, just flicking through a couple of things I did want to highlight into the report, and Rob will take the leadership role on the sport recreation area sitting beside me. But the first thing you'll see is, and I apologise for the lack of context around the graph in the report around liquor applications, but I've been conscious that this is an area of the organisation which probably hasn't been that visible to you, and it's really the work of Nevin's team, which is in the liquor area, which is, as you see, just some bare metrics around number of liquor applications. But it's also an area where compliance is a fairly key role, along with the Ministry of Health and the police, and also where the operation of the district licensing committee under Councillor Hunt is run from. So again, just want to give that little snapshot of a group which also includes the authorisation and regulation around health, in terms of the food providers, particularly in town, around noise, around dog control, the geothermal licensing, and also the compliance issues that arise from the RMA. So it's just an area that I think I need to do a little bit more to highlight going forward, but it's a fairly fundamental part of what this council does to actually make it a really livable place to be, and it's a little bit under the surface for you. Flicking down through, look, this is really a wrap up in terms of the year end, the 30 June figures around the building and consenting areas, and sitting under our new targets in our housing accord. We had a target, I think, of 150 new dwellings that we were wanting to see consented, which pleased to see we got to that target. We were a little bit under the target in terms of the subdivision lots, but probably a key thing with the subdivision is I'm pretty confident that's simply a timing issue, because there's a lot of work in the funnel and under consideration. So far so good in terms of really starting to step up to meet the demand around the housing and Councillor Kent touched on the potential work facing us in terms of the district planning function, and again with the government moving towards a standardisation really of planning processes, both in terms of the what's actually contained in the plans, trying to get consistency across the country, but also in terms of the platform, which Councillor Kent was talking around, to try and get consistently presented e-plans for the ease of use. So we've got a bit of work in terms of working with government and submitting on that process. Just coming on through, going right through to page 24 actually, and again there's just a really little article there about Dr. Rangi Matamua's Matariki talk, and really just to highlight that this has been quite a feature of the Matariki events that have been happening, and this is an event which I think started about 3 years ago with about 60 people go, and now it's a massive event on the program with getting close to 500 people attending. Energy Event Centre, again, I think we touched on the Tall Blacks at our last O&M, but just a reminder really that the relationship with Basketball New Zealand has developed to such an extent that there's another game coming as part of the World Series, and with Lebanon in the middle of September. So exciting that, you know, we're part of a new world group, and Rotorua is one of the key hosts for the New Zealand Games. So again, it's a pretty cool development. And then it's probably on to Rob, really, just to highlight a couple of things under Sport and Rec. Or I can pause and take questions, or we can wait till the end. Yeah.
Through you, Mr Chair, Kia ora committee. We've represented our capital projects in the report this month, so key ones that are happening there, I'll take those as read. Probably one that didn't make it on the list because it's actually that the key spending is targeted for next year is just the work around the skate park. So we have been doing geotech work along Pukawaroa Street side of Kureao Park to understand the stability of the ground there. We need to do that for the Kureao Park development in terms of relocating the market space and also the work on Kureao House, but that's also going to give us the information we need for identifying potential skate park sites. The other section that I'll go on to is the Aquatic Centre, if you could bring up the situation there. So as of the 16th of July, CLM took over operational management of the Aquatic Centre. So 33 staff of the existing staff transitioned across to be taking up employment with CLM. 6 full-time and 2 part-time staff decided not to take that up, and so have taken redundancy. Basically, the new structure has been set up, new uniforms running, so this was when the group basically posted their first Facebook post under the Aquatic Centre Facebook site, which is now being run by CLM. There's also a 2-week update, I think, which is floating around to the councillors, which has been provided. If you haven't got it, we'll make sure that gets fully circulated from CLM. But just going through, they've refurbished the gym and basically made improvements upstairs. They've created a number of new programs in terms of gym and swim membership. They've got swipe cards for admission, so they've increased the basically capacity for getting in, for making sure they can handle the after-school numbers more quickly. The swim school program's extended its programs. We've had a number of holiday programs that have gone on there in the second week of the holidays, and then also now new things like boot camps and things like that are starting. So just to let you know that that operational management has swung through reasonably smoothly. We've had the manager had been there for several months prior being contracted, and so we've got a number of new programs up and running, and the feedback's been pretty positive. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
A bit of feedback I had on the black track suits that the lifeguards were wearing. Someone made a comment that when they were wearing their jackets, that actually when you glanced around early in the morning at a 6 a.m. aqua class, you couldn't actually tell who was the lifeguard and who was everyone else that had turned up to swim. When they took their jackets off, obviously their shirts are coloured, but that was just, I'm sure, a pretty easily fixed aspect of their uniform. So it wasn't a criticism. They loved what was happening, but I thought I'd pass that on.
Yeah, I got a printed communication from one particular lady. She said the outside pool is the cleanest I've seen for the last 12 months. Clearly a lot of elbow grease has been applied and it's appreciated. Once again, congratulations on your efforts to date. So there is a perception out there amongst the community that things are changing for the better. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please indulge. I want to ask a question. I might be asking it the wrong officer, but I'm using the words planning and development. Rates review during the long-term plan process, where council officers spoke about a rates review coming up. Can we get any information on when it's coming up or if it's coming up in the next 12 months?
Yes, PM.
Councillor Okawa-Tate's meeting. It'll be in the agenda next week. Okay, carry on, Rob. Any other questions on sport and recreation? That one come from left field, Councillor Gould. Councillor Donaldson.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Rob, just at the top of page 29, I'm delighted to see there will be a feasibility study for the use of floating jetties, because we've always had this fluctuating lake levels issue. Can you enlarge on that? Is there any particular site planned for a pilot, or is it a desktop exercise at this stage?
Thank you. Through you, the Chair. We have procured an expert engineer who's actually come up from Nelson. It's where they have the biggest tides. And he's been looking at a number of sites for us. Rotorua Merge Lodge is probably one of the key sites in terms of it actually being suitable. Places like Okataina and Marahi Spit have just got too much distance, but somewhere that's quite steep like Merge looks like it's a goer. So he's going to come back to us with some designs and possibilities for those places where they might work. And they won't work everywhere where we have trouble, but there will be some places where they can.
Commenters to Henry to pass on to the staff. After the regional zone meeting, we took the mayors of the region and the chair of regional council over to Te Akamori, and they were completely blown away, actually. They had no idea about how busy the space out the front of it is. It's our new community space. It's the space where events are going to be held and the meeting rooms, and I think they were absolutely blown away by the activity that's going on in there. And I heard that the library activity's gone up 20%, and that there's some sharing between the Children's Hub and the library, and you had to see it to believe it, and I was so proud to show to fellow mayors and the chair. So thank you to the team, but also the funders. They noticed the sponsorship that we'd got to give it the wow factor, and they were very proud to see some sponsorship names up there. So it is really becoming the community bumping space, and we can't wait for the cafe to get going, but that is the space now.
No, thank you, Your Worship, and I will pass that on. And one of the nice little initiatives they are doing with funders is putting out a regular newsletter to them as well, so they remain part of the sort of journey going forward.
Mr. Chairman, I just before asking a question, I just want to say with our Rotorua Aquatic Centre, I'm pleased about the smooth transition to the new people taking it, and I didn't even realise it happened last month. So nice and smooth. And can you give me the figures again of the staff that have taken up the employment opportunities there again, please? I didn't write it down when you gave it to me.
33 of the staff have transitioned straight across. Yep. Well, there was
of 34.
There was going to be 34, but what we discovered was that there was quite a lot of part-timers on our list who have become full-time for CLM. So while we were originally talking about 34, that included some of our part-time staff, 33 of all of the Rotorua Aquatic Centre staff, both full and part-time, have gone across to full-time positions with CLM. 6 full-timers and 2 part-timers didn't.
Very good.
Kia ora, Mr Chair, tēnā tātou. E rua waku pātai, just in terms of the floating jetties, I assume you're talking with the Lakes Trust? That's one thing there. And it's good to see the council supporting Te Papatakaro, or Te Arawa to be used as an umbrella organisation there to take on that role with a community and council-led kaupapa. I assume there's some contribution towards their time to that kaupapa, or is it a aroha job?
No, there's basically that's the council used to collect external funding and redistribute it to the individual communities. So Te Papatakaro will be collecting that funding and distributing it, but we also have a contract with them for providing services.
Kapai, thank you. And this leads on to my last one, if you'll indulge me, Mr Chair. Having Papatakaro there, you've been doing it for a long time, is that sort of, how's that going for you at the moment, I suppose, is what I'm asking?
Certainly, over the years we've been working together, we've been refining the focus, which is the same thing that we're doing with our Sport Bay Plenty partnership as well. Certainly, Te Papatakaro can reach a group that we can't reach, and they have a skill set that adds distinct value to what we can achieve. And so we have been working with those 2 key sort of sport relationship providers for us to actually get focus, and that's working. That is evolving all the time, and it's working very well. So we're very comfortable with the way that's working.
Thank you very much. And just lastly, pass on waku mihi ki tō tīma. To get another professional basketball game here is pretty awesome. So, here, kia ora.
We weren't at the last meeting, you were in Wellington, Ra. I lauded praised the efforts of Jolene and the team at the Energy Event Centre. I went along to the event and I was just blown away at the staging of it, the presentation, the security, the food, the whole thing was a complete and absolute. It was just, you just felt so proud to be there. So I'm not surprised that this was in the air, and Her Worship and I, we worked the room in the VIP lounge, don't you worry about that. We understood that was up for grabs, and Jolene and her team just made our job so much easier to capture that, and I hope the long-term relationship will carry on. We had to spend a bit of money to upgrade some of the paru things that we had down there. We've done that, and it just looks spectacular. Mera pēraka rau kaua Tate?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman. I think this might be yours, Henry, I'm not quite sure. It's really around the little parklet just by Diane's Dairy, and I see this week, or was it last week, that there was a review or the survey on how well it had gone or otherwise, which I actually just loved it, I must say. That's a personal view because I sat out there from time to time. But is that going to continue? Because I'm not sure if that was clear in the article, or you're just evaluating the feedback at this stage. I could see it was mixed, but is it going to be just a summer thing, or is it off the scene altogether now?
At this stage, it's off. So the initial agreement was for a 1-year trial, after which there'd be a review process. So the 1 year's over, so we've stopped the trial. We've still got to complete the review. It's not an easy one in terms of the occupation of public space and how you get a fair regime around that. But we need to weigh that up in terms of implications across a wider area, and also having a look potentially at a better use of footpaths as well. You know, we've got some incredibly wide footpaths around the place which probably could be better used. So yeah, we've got a bit to weigh up. So the initial trial's over, but the review isn't.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure if Henry or Rob can comment on this. We've probably got Her Worship and Council Tapsell to blame, but just your comment on the Energy Event Centre. If Dancing with the Stars gets any more popular, we'll need a bigger shed down there at the lakefront, and certainly the car park can't cope now. So there were people parked in all sorts of strange places halfway up Pahudakawa trees almost. So I don't know if that was observed or commented on, but we probably need to look at a different strategy for getting people in and out for big events like that.
Though, I mean, 1,420 people seated for an event like that, plus all the support staff, I don't think it is a big problem. People still were able to be out of there within 20 minutes, half an hour. So, but again, I'll support you, Councillor Dons. I didn't want to say it, but I was at Dancing with the Stars the other night too, as many of us were, and just spectacular. The whole thing was just spectacular. So pass on to Jolene and her staff. There are a couple of issues in terms of service delivery whilst you're in there, but I'll raise those with Jolene direct, and she can in their review. But otherwise, it was just one of Rotorua's iconic events now. Please pass that. There is one other on page 29 that I want to bring to attention of councillors. The Bay of Plenty Steamers players joined a community action activity at Turner Drive on the 19th of July. Her Worship was obviously at local government conference, so I braved the elements and went out there wrapped up to the nines with umbrella and God knows what else. And it absolutely trucked down. And these steamers guys got out of their way, all young guys, with about 40 kids from the local, and they got drenched. They did their job with staff from council, replanted all the trees, created a community garden, etc., etc., had a free sausage, and the Bay of Plenty Steamers gave every one of those kids, whether they were boys, girls, a free rugby ball each. And I just thought, what a fantastic engagement with a community that gets a bad rap, that there is a bad element up there. We all acknowledge that. But to see what the Bay of Plenty Steamers, so I think a letter of thanks to Mike Rogers on behalf, I'm quite happy to sign it, Henry, a letter of thanks to the Bay of Plenty Steamers and the community engagement in that particular event. It was held in high regard. There was plenty of media coverage of it in terms of the Daily Post, which I was grateful for, but these guys just went out of their way, and when they turned up in their bus, I mean, they had tracksuits on, but they didn't last long, and they just got drenched. So I just want to pass that thanks on. Are there any other questions of the sport and recreation area? There appears to be not. Thank you, gentlemen, for your report. So now we're on to... Is that the end of the meeting? Well, that brings a very exciting meeting to an end, and I thank you for all your attendance and your questions, which have been right on the mark. Thank you to staff. There is just one thing that is on, I would like you all to put in your diaries. The Hannahs Bay Reserve Management Plan review has been undertaken at the moment. Every member of the Hannahs Bay, Holdens Bay community has got one of these brochures to tell them exactly what council's wanting to do out there, and this is the initial stage of engagement with them. So when that process is underway, Rob, having councillor involvement will assist in that. So they're not going to reinvent the wheel, they just want to know what the local community wants. But there are a lot of people, as I said at our run-through meeting, there are a lot of people who don't live in that community that access religiously those two reserves. So They're high use, they need some maintenance, and Rob and his team will come back once this community feedback comes back. So thank you, Rob, for that. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you. Thank you to staff. The edge of the day. Those are morphine. It's the round ones. Yeah. Give me a little bit of larvae. And I've got to take them about 2 o'clock, so that's normally when I go. Crash.